You tap the volume button. The sound rises, just a little, maybe half a notch. You're not even sure if it made a difference, but you still feel better. That's nudging. A small move, one that might not matter much on its own, but it gives you control. You're doing something, and your device responds. That feedback loop is subtle, almost invisible, but it works. Brightness and volume are perfect for this kind of micro-control. They're not critical settings. They don't change the core of how your phone works. They don't change your access or security, but you reach for them often, and when you do, you want results. Not big swings, just steps. Small enough to dial things in, but visible enough to make you feel in charge. Nudging is different from toggling. A toggle is either on or off. It's firm, absolute. Nudging, on the other hand, is a gradual process. One tap equals a slight change. 2 taps, a little more. You're moving towards something, not flipping it. That's important because it changes how people feel about the interaction. A toggle decides. A nudge suggests. Think about being in a meeting. You don't want to mute your phone, but it's too loud. You hit the volume down button, not all the way, just once. That's enough. The phone responds instantly. You might not even notice how much it went down, but you know it listened. That moment matters. It reassures you without interrupting your focus. Or take screen brightness. You're lying in bed. The lights are off. You don't want your screen glowing like a floodlight. You nudge the brightness down. Not to 0, just to a level that doesn't blind you. You do it without opening settings, without digging through menus. One swipe, one press, and the change happens. That's the power of slight adjustments. Even when they do almost nothing, they still help. They're signals that the system hears you. They let you shape your experience, not overhaul it. And that's why people use them more than they might realize. You nudge up the brightness when you step outside. You nudge it back down when you're indoors. It's not a task, it's a habit. These small moves also carry little risk. You're unlikely to ruin anything by increasing volume by 1 step or lowering the brightness a notch. That's different from settings that alter behavior or expose personal data. With nudges, there's no threat. You feel safe trying it out. That sense of safety makes people more willing to engage. They explore. They learn how their device reacts. And in doing so, they build trust. You press, the system responds. You adjust, it follows. It's not dramatic. It's not fancy, but it's effective. Think of someone using their phone at night. The sound is just loud enough to wake someone else. So they nudge it down. They don't pause. They don't second guess. 1 tap, that's it. They know the new level is better, even if it's only slightly quieter. They feel in control because the phone let them make that change instantly. Or think of a person watching a video on a sunny day. The screen feels dim, so they swipe up on brightness. Just a little. The image pops more. That tap doesn't just change the setting. It confirms the screen can adapt. That feeling of adaptability builds confidence. This kind of interaction encourages repetition. When users know they can make small changes quickly, they do it more often. That keeps the experience tuned to their moment, not some preset. It becomes responsive in a human sense, not just reactive, but sensitive. It's also worth noting that nudging avoids commitment. Big adjustments feel final. People hesitate before doing something that might be hard to undo. Nudges sidestep that fear. They feel temporary, even though they aren't. You can always reverse them just as easily. In practice, this plays out in places like airplanes, libraries, dark bedrooms, sunny parks. Environments change, and people want to adapt, but they don't want to think hard or take time. A button press is faster than opening a settings screen. A swipe is quicker than reading options. Micro movements fit these needs well. Nudging also supports a kind of passive personalization. Over time, users tend to settle into a rhythm. They don't think in numbers or percentages. They don't say, I want my brightness at 47%. They just want it brighter or dimmer, louder or softer. The exact value doesn't matter. What matters is how it feels in that moment. That's why most people don't even notice how often they nudge. It happens as part of using the device, not as a separate task. You're watching a video, and you nudge the brightness up. You're listening to music, and you nudge the volume down. You're not adjusting settings, you're tuning your experience. And that difference matters. Even when the actual change is tiny, the feeling of action is real. It's the same reason why people click pens or tap their fingers. Emotion gives them feedback. It lets them feel involved. Nudging taps into that instinct without being distracting. You don't need confirmation messages or pop-ups to make this work. The result is the feedback. The screen gets brighter. The sound gets quieter. You know what happened because you can see or hear it. That's enough. Anything more would slow things down. The physical design helps too. Volume buttons are always there. Brightness sliders appear when you need them. No search required. No decisions. Just movement. That keeps the flow smooth. You stay in the moment. You stay in control. Designers sometimes overlook this kind of subtle control because it seems small. It's easy to think bigger changes are better. But most of the time, people don't want big changes. They want things to feel just right. And that just right often lives in the space between two steps. That's where nudging excels. It doesn't promise transformation. It offers alignment. It brings the device closer to the user's current state. That might sound minor, but in practice, it shapes how people feel about the whole system. One nudge at a time. One small move that means, I see you. I'm here. Let's adjust. And that's enough. You get a flat tire on the way to a job interview. Later that day, you don't get the job. You tell yourself it was fate. The universe was warning you. Maybe that job wasn't right for you. Maybe something better is coming. It feels good to think that way. It brings shape to a messy day. But the truth is simple. Your tire had nothing to do with your rejection. Still, the story helps it all make sense. That's the narrative fallacy. It's the tendency to link separate events into a single story. You take things that happen, some big, some small, and build a plot. You add causes, motives, lessons. You ignore luck. You ignore randomness. You fill in the gaps, even when there's nothing to fill. It feels normal, because stories are how we understand the world. But when we force stories onto chance events, we start believing things that aren't true. Imagine someone starts a business. It fails after 2 years. He says it was because he trusted the wrong partner. Or maybe he blames poor timing. Either way, he picks a reason. But it might have been a mix of factors, some clear, some hidden. The economy changed. A competitor launched. The product didn't catch on. Maybe he never stood a chance. Maybe he just got unlucky. But saying, I got unlucky, doesn't satisfy. It feels empty. So he picks a cause. He shapes the failure into a tale. The same happens with success. A woman starts a blog. It goes viral. She says it's because she stuck to her values or trusted her gut. Maybe that helped. Or maybe an influencer shared it at the right time. Maybe her timing just lined up with a trend. But she doesn't see all of that. She sees her choices. She looks back and strings them into a neat path. That story isn't false, but it leaves a lot out. Hindsight feeds this problem. Once something happens, we look back and try to explain it. We see patterns. We highlight moments that seem important, but those moments only stand out after the fact. Before then, they looked like everything else. Think of picking a stock. If it rises, you say, I knew it had potential. If it falls, you say, the signs were there. Either way, you rewrite the past to match the outcome. News stories do this all the time. A market crashes. Analysts say it was because of a speech or a report, but markets are complex. One event rarely causes a full collapse. Still, the story runs. A happened, then B happened, so A caused B. It's a clean arc. It feels smart, but it's often wrong. The danger is not just in being wrong. It's in how stories change our behavior. When we believe simple stories, we take false lessons from them. A manager sees a teammate succeed by breaking the rules. She tells herself, that's how to get ahead. So next time, she cuts corners. But the first teammate may have just been lucky. Her risks may have gone unnoticed. Still, the story makes rule-breaking look like the key to success. Or take sports. A team wins 5 games in a row. A fan says it's because of team chemistry or grit. But what if they just played weaker opponents? What if a few key calls went their way? The streak feels like a story, but it could be noise. Still, fans and coaches act like the narrative is real. They train around it. They build strategy around it. And that changes outcomes based on faulty cause and effect. Personal memory works the same way. You remember a vacation as peaceful. You say it was because of the location or the weather. But maybe it was just a quiet week in your life. Maybe you had fewer emails, fewer demands. You assign meaning, even if the real cause was outside your control. And when you try to recreate the trip, it doesn't feel the same. The story gave you false direction. This doesn't mean stories are useless. They help us cope. They help us share experiences. But when we use them to explain events that have no clear cause, we mislead ourselves. We feel more certain than we should. We act on guesses as if they were facts. The narrative fallacy can also shape how we see other people. You meet someone who's quiet. You think they're cold or unfriendly. Later, you learn they had a bad headache. Your story about them was based on one clue. That story felt right, but it missed the truth. Once the story forms, it's hard to shake. You start to see all their behavior through that lens. That's the trap. Job interviews, dates, elections, medical recoveries, all of them fall prey to this fallacy. A person gets better after taking a vitamin. They say it cured them. Maybe the illness was already passing, but the story of the vitamin is easier to believe. It offers control. It offers order. It removes doubt. We crave that order. Randomness feels unsafe. We want things to follow rules. So when they don't, we make up rules. We say things like everything happens for a reason, or it wasn't meant to be. These ideas are comforting, but they're stories, not facts. The world doesn't owe us a plot. Sometimes, 2 things happen one after the other, and that's all. One didn't cause the other. They just happened. Still, we reach for the thread. We want to tie them together. When we do that, we miss what's real. We give power to things that didn't matter. We shape actions around ideas that have no proof. It helps to pause and ask, do I know this, or do I just believe it because it fits? Am I seeing facts, or am I filling in blanks with guesses? That habit, pausing before believing the story, makes space for better thinking. Not perfect thinking, just a little more honest, and that's enough. You walk into a meeting a minute late and say, sorry. You ask a question during a talk and begin with, sorry if this is obvious. You pass someone in a hallway and mumble, sorry, even when they're the one blocking the way. You're not really sorry. You didn't do anything wrong. But the word slips out anyway. It's not about guilt, it's about control. That's over-apologizing. We use apologies to manage how others see us. The word sorry softens a moment. It makes us seem humble, careful, self-aware. We hope it keeps people from thinking we're rude or thoughtless. It's a kind of social padding, but when used too often, it loses meaning. It stops sounding sincere. Worse, it makes us seem less confident, even when we know exactly what we're doing. Imagine someone giving a presentation. They start with, sorry, I'm not great at public speaking. Right away, they undercut their position. The apology doesn't invite support, It invites doubt. The audience hears the weakness, not the message. That person might think they're being polite or modest, but they're handing away authority before they've even started. Or picture someone asking for help at work. They write, "Sorry to bother you," before every message. The words pile up. Eventually, the apology sounds like a script. The request becomes smaller than it needs to be. It signals that their need isn't worth the other person's time. That may not be the message they want to send, but it's the one that lands. Over-apologizing often shows up in people who try to avoid conflict. They use sorry as a shield. If they seem nice enough, soft enough, they hope others won't push back. It becomes a way to stay safe. But the shield also blocks respect. People notice the pattern. They begin to read that person as unsure or passive, even when that's not the case. In some cases, over-apologizing is a habit picked up early. It might have worked once, maybe with a strict parent, a harsh teacher, or a tense social group. Saying sorry made things smoother. It avoided arguments, so it stuck. But habits built in one place don't always help in others. What made sense at home can backfire at work or in friendships. There's also a cultural layer. In many places, especially in Western contexts, people are taught that saying sorry is polite. It shows awareness. It keeps things calm. That's true up to a point. But politeness and submission aren't the same. You can be kind without giving up ground. You can be aware without lowering your voice. Take the case of someone walking into a crowded room. They say sorry as they squeeze through, even though they're doing nothing wrong. They're just moving. A better phrase might be, "Excuse me." It still signals respect, but it doesn't imply guilt. It makes space without shrinking. In written language, the pattern can be even more visible. Emails begin with "sorry for the delay," even when the reply came within a normal time frame, or "sorry to reach out again," when the topic is valid and the timing reasonable. The apology becomes filler. It doesn't serve a purpose, but it takes up space. And over time, it shapes how others see the sender, as hesitant, maybe even as someone who doubts their own place. This kind of framing matters. Language builds perception. If you say you're sorry for everything, people start to believe you've done something wrong. Even if they don't consciously judge you, the tone sets in. It nudges you into a lower position. And if you say it enough, you might start to believe it too. It's not about removing all apologies. Real ones matter. When you make a mistake, miss a deadline, hurt someone, break trust, a clear, direct apology shows strength. It takes ownership. But that's different from spraying sorry across every small moment. That kind of language doesn't show strength. It shows fear. Some people use sorry as a way to smooth over discomfort. They feel unsure, so they try to soften the tension. But discomfort doesn't always need to be fixed. A pause in conversation doesn't mean you failed. A request doesn't need to be dressed up to be valid. Silence isn't always a signal that you've done wrong. There's also a gendered layer. Studies show women are more likely to over-apologize than men, often because they've been taught to prioritize harmony. That means they say sorry, not just for their actions, but for their presence, for speaking, for needing space. It's a form of self-erasure dressed as manners, and it costs more than it seems to. At work, this habit can affect how someone's competence is judged. The same person doing the same task, but one adds sorry to every message, will often be taken less seriously. That's not fair, but it's real. Language matters, even at the smallest level. You also hear it in meetings. "Sorry, just one thought." Or, "Sorry, but I'd like to add." The word "just" often follows, shrinking the idea even more. Together, they act like a preemptive apology for having an opinion. They set the speaker up to be ignored. There are better ways to keep communication smooth without sounding guilty. Replace sorry with phrases like "thanks for your patience" or "let me know what you think." Use neutral openings like "following up on this" instead of "sorry to bother." And when you need to assert a point, do it plainly. You don't need permission to speak. Even if others don't notice every sorry, you do. You hear yourself say it. And over time, it shapes how you see your own role. It teaches you that your needs are a burden, that your space is borrowed, that your time is less important. Those aren't ideas you want to practice. You can still be polite. You can still be warm. But when there's nothing to be sorry for, don't say you are. Say what you mean. Say it clearly. Let the words stand on their own. You don't need to apologize for being here. You already are. You win a game and say you played smart. You lose and say the ref made bad calls. That's self-serving bias. It's the habit of claiming credit for the good and blaming others for the bad. Most people do it, often without thinking. It protects your sense of control. It helps you feel like you're in charge of outcomes. But it distorts the truth. It builds a version of yourself that only works when things go your way. Take a manager whose team hits their sales target. She tells her boss it happened because of her strategy. She led the meetings. She set the tone. But when they miss the target next quarter, her story changes. She says marketing didn't support them. The product wasn't ready. The leads were weak. Each version makes her look good. Each version protects her standing. It's easy to do because it feels natural. When you succeed, you see the effort. You see the hours. You remember your choices. But when you fail, those same details fade. The outside factors step in. You focus on the parts you didn't control. You shift the cause. You guard your image. Now think about a student who aces an exam. He says he studied hard. He deserved the grade. But when he fails another test, he says the teacher didn't explain things clearly. He didn't sleep well. The questions were unfair. In both cases, he sees the outcome as a reflection of something other than chance. When he does well, it's skill. When he doesn't, it's something else. You see the same thing in group work. When a project turns out well, everyone wants to say they contributed the key idea. If it falls apart, fingers point in every direction but inward. One person says someone else missed deadlines. Another says the scope was too vague. Nobody wants to be the one who says, "I didn't deliver what I said I would." That admission feels too risky. This bias can even show up when people review their own careers. Someone who climbed the ladder says it was hard work. It was persistence. But someone who stalled says the company was unfair. The manager didn't see their value. The timing was wrong. The truth might lie somewhere in between. But the bias smooths over the rough parts. It edits the story so the speaker stays in the lead role. It's not always loud or obvious. Sometimes it hides behind polite language. A team fails a project, and someone says, "We did everything we could, but external factors were tough." That may be true, but it also avoids a closer look at the choices that were actually in their hands. The phrasing gives cover. It makes reflection optional. Athletes often fall into this pattern. When they win, they talk about training, focus, mindset. When they lose, they talk about travel, noise, bad calls. The pattern helps them stay confident, but it also gets in the way of real feedback. It makes it harder to know what actually worked and what didn't. In politics, self-serving bias turns into something louder. A leader takes credit for economic growth, even if trends were already heading that way before their term. When numbers drop, they blame outside forces, past policies, global events, bad luck. The public gets used to hearing a version of events where credit sticks close to power, but blame gets outsourced. In relationships, the bias causes friction. One partner says, "I keep the peace. You're the one who starts fights." The other says the same. Each one sees themselves as the calm one. Each one protects their view of being reasonable. That leads to deadlock. Neither wants to admit they played a part in the tension. The story protects the self, but the pattern stays stuck. Even small moments show this bias. Someone bumps into you, and you think they weren't paying attention. You bump into someone, and you think, that hallway was too tight. The situation is the same, but the lens changes depending on who's at fault. You shift the frame to protect your image. Social media makes it worse. People share success with a story that centers their effort. They rarely mention the good luck, the help they had, or the timing. That's not dishonest, but it's incomplete. It builds a world where success looks like pure skill, and failure looks like personal flaw, or better yet, someone else's mistake. The result is a set of stories that make others feel like they're falling short, even if they're doing the same work. You can't get rid of self-serving bias entirely. It's built into how people protect self-esteem, but you can spot it. You can ask questions that cut through it. When something goes right, ask what part was luck. When something fails, ask what part you controlled. It's not about taking the blame for everything. It's about seeing the whole picture. Growth only comes when you stop writing yourself as the hero in every scene. Think of someone who always blames others when they don't meet goals. After a while, their team stops listening. The pattern becomes clear. There's no accountability. Now think of someone who owns their part, even when it's uncomfortable. That person builds trust. Their words carry weight. People know they're not just protecting a story, they're looking for the truth. You sit down to watch a video. An ad pops up. You don't care what it's selling. You just want it gone. You wait 5 seconds. The small gray button appears. You click skip ad. The ad vanishes, and your video plays. That moment feels good. It's fast, clean, and quiet. You got what you wanted. It's a small decision, but it feels like control. That's the gratification, not from skipping the ad itself, but from being the one who chose. The skip ad button is designed for this. It turns frustration into relief. You didn't ask for the ad. You didn't want to be interrupted, but the button lets you act. You don't need to wait the full 30 seconds. You don't need to sit passively. You click and it's over. That power, even for a second, feels real. It soothes the friction of being forced into something you didn't choose. This kind of interaction is small by design. It's not meant to change your life. It's meant to reduce your resistance. You might not like ads, but now you don't hate them quite as much. You know you'll have to see the first 5 seconds, but after that, you're in control. That compromise keeps you on the platform. It keeps you watching. The system wins and you feel like you've won too. The timing matters. 5 seconds is short enough to endure, but just long enough to be annoying. If you could skip instantly, you wouldn't feel anything. If you had to watch the full ad, you might leave. But 5 seconds? That's long enough to want out and short enough to stay. It builds the feeling that you earned the right to skip. The platform designs it that way on purpose. Think about how that feels across a day. You make big decisions at work. You manage deadlines. You juggle tasks. But many things still feel out of your hands. Traffic delays your commute. Software updates interrupt your screen. Emails pile up. The skip ad button cuts through all of that. One press, one win. It's a clean moment where your choice matters. That's why the satisfaction is so sharp. You're not negotiating. You're not adjusting. You're not asking. You're acting. That's rare in digital spaces, where most systems guide you through steps, options, or long menus. The button gives you a shortcut. It lets you bypass noise. That bypass is what feels good. It's also worth noting that the ad isn't truly gone. You still saw the brand. You still heard the first few seconds. That's all the advertiser paid for. They just needed a chance to get in your head. Whether you skipped or not, the impression landed. But you don't think about that. You think about the click. You think about the moment you took back your screen. Now compare it to ads without a skip button. You sit through all 30 seconds. You sigh. You check the time. You get annoyed. The ad doesn't just feel long, it feels forced. The lack of choice turns a simple ad into a power struggle. You didn't want to watch it, and you had no way out. That changes how you see the platform. You stop trusting it. You feel stuck. The skip ad button avoids that. It offers the illusion of choice, but that illusion works. It diffuses the tension. You remember clicking skip, not being forced to watch. That small difference changes your view of the whole interaction. It makes the system feel more fair, even if nothing really changed. This gratification shows up in other places too. Think of pop-ups that say no thanks, or prompts that let you opt out. Even those small clicks feel like wins. You didn't just let something happen. You made a choice. You closed a window. You dismissed a prompt. You acted. That's what matters. In design terms, this is behavioral pacification. The system offers you a small action to keep you engaged. It doesn't remove friction. It manages your reaction to it. Instead of avoiding annoyance, it gives you a release valve. You don't get mad. You get a button. You click it. You move on. Some platforms take this further. They show the countdown. You can skip in 5, 4, 3. That countdown builds anticipation. It turns waiting into action. You're not just stuck watching. You're waiting for your moment too. It's a trick, but an effective one. It trains you to feel good about being allowed to leave. This is also why many users feel uncomfortable when the skip option disappears. It's not just that the ad is longer, it's that the choice is gone. The interaction feels different. It reminds you that the system is in charge, not you. That shift breaks the trust. You start to feel trapped again. One missing button, and the balance tips. Even kids pick this up fast. They watch for the button. They wait to click. They learn the pattern before they can read. The reward is clear. Click, and the fun starts. That reward loop sticks. It becomes a part of how they expect systems to work. Choice first, gratification second. It shapes how they respond to content in general. The button also trains you to tolerate interruption. You know the ad's coming. You accept it because you believe you can skip it. That belief changes how you see the ad. It's no longer a threat. It's a minor pause. The button softens the edge. It makes the intrusion feel less intrusive. Over time, this kind of interaction teaches you to see control in places where you don't really have it. That's the deeper effect. You feel agency in a system that controls the timing, the content, the rules. But you got to skip. You made that call. That one small decision feels like enough. You stand in the kitchen on a Sunday night. Containers line the counter. Chicken, rice, vegetables, all portioned out and sealed. You stack them in the fridge. Tomorrow, you'll eat the first one. The next day, the second. You've planned it all. The meals are ready. The week feels ready. That's the comfort. But under that calm surface, something else sits. Uncertainty. You can't control what's coming, but you can control what's in your lunch. Meal prep is more than food. It's a ritual. It turns a vague future into something that feels solid. Every container is a small promise. You'll eat well. You'll stay on track. You won't have to decide later. You've already decided now. It feels like control. It looks like discipline. But often, it covers up a deeper feeling, the sense that the rest of your life isn't as structured as it should be. You see the same thing with planners and routines. The morning routine, the gin calendar, the evening wind-down checklist. These aren't bad habits. They help. They reduce stress, but they also act as anchors. They tie you to something fixed when everything else feels loose. You tell yourself that if your mornings are clean, your life is on track. If your fridge is stocked, you must be doing okay. This behavior isn't dishonest. It's practical, but it creates a kind of emotional camouflage. You look busy. You look organized. You tell yourself the system works. But underneath, there's a gap between the plan and the purpose. You're not solving uncertainty. You're managing its symptoms. Take someone who lays out their outfits for the week every Sunday. Each folded shirt and matched sock gives a sense of order. But they're not just avoiding last-minute choices. They're trying to quiet the background noise of a job they don't like. The morning feels stable, so the day feels more bearable. The ritual doesn't fix the job, but it masks the discomfort. Or think about someone who builds a perfect schedule. They color code their tasks. They track water, steps, hours slept. But the routine often becomes a stand-in for direction. If the plan is full, the life feels full. The uncertainty stays in the margins. The structure keeps it out of sight. Meal prep, in particular, carries extra weight. Food is survival. Controlling it feels serious. You make decisions in advance, so you don't have to trust yourself later. It's not just about eating healthy. It's about being someone who eats healthy. The containers don't just hold food, they hold identity. But no matter how many meals you prepare, they don't answer the bigger questions. You can have your lunch for Thursday packed and labeled, but still feel lost about what you're doing next month. You can eat chicken and broccoli 5 days in a row and still wonder why you're exhausted. The ritual doesn't lie. It just distracts. That distraction is reinforced by praise. People admire discipline. They say you're organized. They say they wish they were like you. That feedback encourages you to keep going. It feels like success. But if you stop for a moment and ask what's really working, the answer might be unclear. It's not that planning is bad. It's useful. But when the ritual becomes the goal, the meaning fades. You go through the motions, but the sense of progress disappears. You prep the meals because that's what you do now. You don't question whether the structure still serves you. Sometimes the obsession with routine grows because other parts of life feel unsteady. A relationship is strained. Work feels aimless. Money is tight. You can't solve those in a weekend, but you can plan your meals. You can track your time. The short-term clarity replaces the long-term unknown. It also helps to avoid choice. Decisions take effort. If your meals are set, your outfits chosen, your routine fixed, then you don't have to think. You follow the script. That removes risk. You don't make the wrong choice if you don't make a choice at all. But the trade-off is distance from your own needs. You stop asking what you want. You focus on staying on plan. There's also a kind of performative layer. You post the meal prep photo. You show your routine. It tells the world you're stable, even if things are breaking beneath the surface. The outside looks calm. The photo is neat. The meals are in rows. The signal is clear. I'm in control. This isn't just about appearance. It's about safety. The world is messy. Life is uncertain. Planning gives you a grip. Even a weak grip feels better than none. The routine becomes a shield. The prep becomes armor. But the danger is when it hardens into something you can't question. When breaking the routine feels like breaking down. Some people realize this when the system slips. Ain't this a prep day? They forget a task. Suddenly, the comfort is gone. The plan is broken. And if the plan was the only thing holding things together, the break hits hard. That's when the gap becomes clear. The ritual wasn't just about food or time. It was doing emotional labor. This doesn't mean structure is empty. It means it has limits. Rituals help, but they don't fix. They organize, but they don't answer. When the structure works, it should serve the person, not the other way around. If the plan helps you do what matters, it's doing its job. If the plan is what matters, then something else might be missing. The goal isn't to stop planning. The goal is to ask what the planning is really for. If it's about making space for your life, that's useful. If it's about covering up how uncertain life feels, that's worth noticing. Either way, the container is just a container. What you put in it and why is what counts. You buy an expensive jacket. Later, you notice it doesn't fit that well. The sleeves are a little short. The fabric feels stiff. But instead of returning it, you say it's fine. You tell yourself it's high quality. You say it just needs time to break in. You find reasons to feel good about the choice. That shift isn't about the jacket. It's about you keeping your sense of control. You changed your belief to match your action. That's how cognitive dissonance works. Cognitive dissonance is the mental tension that happens when your actions and your beliefs don't line up. You think of yourself as smart, but you do something careless. You see yourself as honest, but you stretch the truth. That gap feels uncomfortable, so the mind moves to close it. It bends one side to match the other. Usually, the belief changes, not because it's false, but because keeping the old belief would make you feel out of control. Take a job you don't like. You tell people you're happy with it. You say it's a good opportunity. You even tell yourself that. But you dread Mondays. You scroll job listings when no one's watching. Still you stay. Instead of admitting the job isn't right, You change how you talk about it. You protect the image that you're in charge of your life. You'd rather adjust your beliefs than admit you might be stuck. This happens in relationships too. Someone treats you poorly. They ignore your needs or speak with contempt. You don't leave. You tell yourself they're just stressed. You say they're not usually like this. You smooth out the edges of what's really happening. It keeps the story simple. You're with them because you want to be, not because you're scared of change. The belief bends. The action stays in place. The dissonance can even show up in small choices. You eat fast food after swearing off it. You say it was just this once. You were busy. You'll get back on track tomorrow. It's not that you forgot your goal. It's that breaking the rule didn't fit your idea of being in control. So you rewrite the rule. It becomes flexible. That way, you're not breaking it. You're adjusting it. Think of someone who smokes but believes in health. The two don't fit, so they shift. They say it helps with stress. They say their grandparents smoked and lived to 90. They're not ignoring the science. They're building a new way to see it. That way, they can keep the habit without feeling like they've failed themselves. The key isn't that these people are lying. They're not. They believe what they're saying. The change happens quietly. It doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like clarity. The tension fades, and they feel whole again. That feeling of wholeness matters more than whether the belief is accurate. Marketers use this all the time. You buy something on impulse. Later, you're not sure it was worth it, but the ads show happy people using the same product. They talk about how it changed their lives. You see that and feel better. You decide the product must be good. You keep it. You recommend it. The story helps you feel like you made a smart decision. You didn't change your behavior. You changed how you see it. Politics is full of this too. You support a candidate who makes a bad decision. You say the media twisted it. You say they had no choice. You explain it away, not because you're blind, but because admitting they were wrong feels like admitting you were wrong to trust them. So you hold on. The belief flexes. The loyalty stays. It happens in parenting. A parent yells at a child, then feels bad. They say the child was being difficult. They say it was necessary. They don't want to see themselves as harsh. That would mean they lost control. So the story changes to protect the identity. I'm a good parent who just had a hard moment. That version hurts less than the truth might. Even in healthcare, you see it. A person refuses treatment, then gets worse. They say they wouldn't have trusted the doctor anyway. They say medicine is unreliable. The body got worse, but the mind wants to stay right. The belief shifts again, not to help, but to settle the conflict. This isn't weakness, it's survival. The brain doesn't like loose ends. It wants a clean story. When facts threaten the story usually wins. It's faster to change a belief than to undo an action. So beliefs become soft. They take the shape they need to take. They make sure you still feel like you're steering the ship, even when the water is moving you. You can feel this shift most when someone challenges you. They point out a gap. They say your story doesn't hold. You feel tight in the chest. You explain. You defend. Not to them, but to yourself. You reach for a version of events that lines up. The new version fits. The tension drops. It's not about the facts. It's about balance. This happens even when the stakes are low. You back into a parking space and it takes 3 tries. Someone watches. You tell yourself the space was narrow. You say your tires were low. You protect your sense of skill. That moment wasn't about parking. It was about staying in control of how you see yourself. Cognitive dissonance doesn't always lead to bad thinking. Sometimes it leads to growth. You make a mistake and can't explain it away. The belief holds firm. The behavior has to change. That tension becomes useful. But most of the time, the mind works to avoid that. It wants peace. It wants to believe you're consistent, even when you're not. So it edits. It smooths over the cracks. That edit feels like relief. The belief now fits the action. The story lines up. You move on. You're still in control. Or at least you feel like you are. The screen freezes. The app won't load. The sound cuts out. You press the power button. Hold it for a few seconds, and the device shuts down. You wait. You turn it back on. You don't know what caused the problem. You don't know if it will come back. But for now, the screen works again. The sound plays. Things feel normal. That's the ritual. It's not about fixing the issue. It's about pressing a button and feeling like you did something. Restarting a device is one of the oldest moves in modern tech use. Phones, computers, routers, TVs. When they act up, you turn them off and on. The habit cuts across all skill levels. Beginners do it because they don't know what else to try. Experts do it because they know it works, sometimes. But even when it doesn't solve the problem, the act itself feels good. It gives shape to a vague frustration. You face a broken system. You don't understand the cause. You don't have time to debug. You press the button. You take a breath. That pause resets more than the device. It resets your own tension. You were stuck. Now you're in motion. The screen goes dark. A noise stops. The process begins again. That moment, more than the result, brings relief. There's also something physical about it. Devices often feel abstract. You swipe, you tap, you watch pixels move. But the power button is real. It clicks, it holds weight. You can press it with force. You can hold it down. That action cuts through the fog of software. It brings things back to something you can touch. This is why the ritual stays even when it doesn't help. The printer doesn't connect. You restart it anyway. The internet drops. You unplug the router. You don't check the settings. You don't ask why. You just restart. It's fast. It's simple. It makes sense in the moment. You feel like you're doing something. That sense of action is often more important than the outcome. Sometimes, this behavior works. Many errors are temporary. A bad memory load, a stalled process, a glitch in the boot sequence. Turning it off clears the state. Starting fresh clears the problem. But the success reinforces the habit, even when the cause was random. The more often it works, the more you rely on it. You don't build understanding. You build reaction. You see the same thing in workplaces. A video call fails. The speaker's voice cuts out. Someone says, "Try restarting your machine." The speaker nods and disappears. Everyone waits. A few minutes pass. The screen returns. The voice is clear. The issue fades. No one learns what happened. The group moves on. The ritual worked. IT departments both encourage and resent this behavior. "Did you try restarting it?" becomes a running joke. It's the first question on the script because it often clears the easy problems, but it's also a sign that the system isn't clear. Users don't know what to do, so they default to power cycling. It masks confusion with motion. The habit crosses into personal life too. A smart TV lags. The screen won't switch inputs. You unplug it, wait 10 seconds, plug it back in. The HDMI port starts working. You don't look up a fix. You don't log a support ticket. You just keep restarting. The pattern is comfortable. It feels like control. But the relief is often emotional, not technical. The system might have been overloaded. The software might have crashed. Restarting didn't fix the cause. It just delayed the next failure. Still, you feel better. The screen is responsive. The buttons work again. The mood lifts. You're no longer stuck. This is the key point. The ritual gives the feeling of mastery without requiring it. You don't need to understand the software stack or the error code. You just need to know how to restart. That's the baseline power we've learned to accept. You don't control the system, but you control when it starts again. The deeper appeal comes from what the device represents. It holds your work, your entertainment, your communication. When it fails, it interrupts your day. It reminds you that the system is fragile. Restarting gives you a way to push back. You're not helpless. You have a move. You use it. Some people apply the same logic to their own behavior. A bad day ends, and they say, "Tomorrow I'll reset." A tough week closes, and they plan to start fresh Monday. These are mental restarts. They don't undo the past, they don't solve the cause, but they offer the same emotional payoff. A pause, a break, a sense of forward motion. It's the same idea behind clearing browser history or deleting apps. You didn't fix what led to the clutter, but you wiped the slate. The feeling is clean. The screen is empty. You're starting again. That's what matters in the moment. We build trust in these rituals because they rarely fail in obvious ways. The phone turns back on. The laptop boots up. That feedback loop builds confidence. It makes us think we fixed something, but often we've just passed the issue forward. Still, that's enough for now. The system works again. The screen lights up. The sound returns. The error fades. You turned it off. You turned it on. You're back in motion. The relief is real, even if the fix isn't. That's the value of the ritual. It doesn't solve the machine. It settles the person. You glance at your wrist. The number stares back, 7,842. You frown. You need more steps. You walk in place while brushing your teeth. You pace your room while on the phone. You take the long way to the kitchen. At 10,000, the watch buzzes, a tiny celebration. You nod, satisfied. You moved enough today. Or at least, that's what the number tells you. Step tracking turns walking into a metric. It puts motion into data. 10,000 steps equals a good day. Anything less feels like a miss. That number doesn't come from deep medical research. It started as a marketing idea for a Japanese pedometer in the 1960s, but it stuck. Now it shapes behavior for millions of people. The draw is simple. Numbers feel objective. They give you a sense of progress. You might feel tired, distracted, or stressed, but if the number looks good, you feel like your health is in check. You walked. You moved. You did what you were supposed to. That's a powerful feeling in a world that often feels uncertain. The tracker doesn't just record, it prompts. You see the number and you respond. You adjust your route. You take an extra lap. You pace after dinner. The device trains you. The reward isn't physical health, it's feedback. The buzz, the goal ring, the line graph. These things turn movement into achievement. But that sense of control can become a trap. You start to believe the number says more than it does. You feel healthier on a 12,000 step day, even if your sleep was bad and your stress was high. You trust the count more than your body. You walk more, but not always better. Take someone who has a desk job. They walk loops around the office to hit their step goal. They don't stretch. They don't rest. They move just to feed the number. The motion becomes disconnected from purpose. It's no longer about feeling well. It's about not breaking the streak. Or consider a person recovering from injury. They feel pain by the afternoon, but they haven't hit their steps yet. They keep going. They push through. They tell themselves that staying active is key, but they're not listening to their body. They're following the data. That obedience can lead to harm. Some people even walk late at night, back and forth in their living room, just to see the number round up. They're not wrong for doing it. They want control, but the control is narrow. It only looks at one part of the picture. They walked, yes, but did they rest? Did they eat well? Did they breathe deeply even once? The obsession comes from how step trackers frame success. They give you daily goals. They tell you how far behind you are. They rank your progress. It feels like a game, but the stakes feel real. You think, if I hit my number, I'm doing fine. If I miss it, I'm falling behind. That belief shapes your sense of self. The language doesn't help. Move goal. Activity streak. You crushed it. These phrases add weight to the data. They make you feel like you're winning or losing. The body becomes secondary. The number becomes the proof. Even rest gets measured. Some trackers count recovery time. They rate your sleep. You wake up and check your sleep score before checking in with how you actually feel. That's the shift. You don't ask your body, you ask the device. Step tracking also fits into a larger need, the desire to control the future. Health feels vague. You can eat well and still get sick. You can work out and still feel down. But steps feel solid. You see them, You count them, you control them. That gives a false sense of certainty. You're not just walking anymore. You're managing your image of wellness. You scroll through charts, you compare weeks, you share milestones. The numbers become a part of your identity. You're a 12,000 a day person. You're someone who never misses. That story is strong. It gives you a role to play. But when the number slips, when you get sick or travel or rest, you feel off. You didn't move enough. You didn't do your part. You feel like you failed, even when resting was the better choice. That guilt isn't from the body. It's from the belief. Step trackers aren't the problem. They help people get moving. They show patterns. They remind you that activity matters, but they also create pressure. They turn well-being into a score. And once it's a score, it's something you can win or lose. Some users turn off the alerts. They stop checking the numbers. They still walk. They still move, but they let go of the count. Others go the opposite way. They track everything: food, steps, sleep, heart rate. The data pile grows, but the meaning thins out. The promise behind tracking is that more data means more control, but the reality is more complex. Your body isn't a dashboard. It doesn't follow linear rules. It has moods, it has seasons. Some days, fewer steps are fine. Some days, stillness is what you need. You can't graph peace of mind. You can't chart meaning. But those are part of well-being too. A walk without a goal can feel better than a walk aimed at hitting a target. A slow day isn't wasted just because the number is low. Steps matter, but they don't tell the full story. You look at two photos. You point to the one you like more. The person running the test nods and hands the photo back. You start explaining your choice. You say the lighting was better. The expressions seemed more real. But you don't notice something. The photo in your hand isn't the one you picked. It's the other one. The switch happened so smoothly that you missed it. Yet you explain the photo anyway. You defend it like it was always your pick. That's choice blindness. Choice blindness happens when we don't notice a change in the choice we made, but still believe you're explaining that original choice. It shows up in labs, but it also happens in daily life. We trust our memory of choosing more than the facts of what we chose. And once we think we made a decision, we'll explain it, whether we made it or not. This isn't about lying. People aren't faking it. They believe they're being honest. The mind doesn't stop to verify every step. Once the story is in place, I picked this, it fills in the rest. You backfill reasons. You build a case. It feels natural. Imagine someone shops online for a new backpack. They compare options. They think they chose the dark green one. A week later, a black one arrives. They shrug and say, "Right, I picked black. Green felt too bright." They didn't notice the mistake. Or maybe they don't remember the earlier choice clearly. Either way, they explain the outcome as if it was their plan all along. Now picture a voter who watches a debate. Before it starts, they lean toward one candidate. But during the debate, the other one makes a strong case. They sway a little. Afterward, they fill out a survey. They say they still support the original candidate, but the reasoning they give lines up with points the second one made. Their beliefs shifted, but they don't see it. They think their choice held steady. Their brain smooths out the conflict. You also see it in product tests. A person tastes two jams. They say they like the first one better. The jars get switched. They taste again. They say the second one was their original favorite. They point out the texture, the sweetness. They offer reasons. But the jam didn't change. The label did. The mind, though, doesn't catch the swap. It catches the feeling of being in control. Choice blindness shows how much of our decision-making is based on storytelling. We make a move, or think we did, and then we explain it. But the explanation doesn't come from deep logic. It comes from a need to stay consistent. If we think we chose it, we want to believe we had a reason. So we make one. This matters in everyday life. Think about a person choosing between two apartments. They pick one, sign the lease, and move in. A month later, they see photos of the other option. They realize they'd confused the layouts. The place they liked more was the one they didn't pick, but they've already committed. So they say, "The one I picked feels cozier anyway." The facts changed, but their loyalty to the choice stayed. They don't want to feel like they made a mistake. You can also see it in relationships. Someone picks a partner and tells themselves it was the right match. Later, red flags appear, but instead of rethinking the choice, they justify it. No one's perfect, they say. Or, it's just a rough patch. The bond to the choice becomes stronger than the bond to the truth. Even in something as simple as menu choices, this shows up. You order a dish. The food arrives, but the server made a mistake and gave you something else. You eat it. You say it's what you wanted. You explain the flavors. You talk about how it hits the spot. Only later do you realize it wasn't what you picked. But by then, the story has settled. Choice blindness isn't just a memory glitch. It's a survival tool. It helps you move on. If you pause to question every step, you'd get stuck. The brain wants closure. It wants to believe you know what you're doing. So it accepts the result and builds reasons around it. That process makes you feel in control, even when you weren't. In some cases, this helps. You avoid regret. You adapt quickly. You stay confident. But it also hides real mistakes. If you think you chose something for the right reasons, you're less likely to review how you got there. That makes it hard to learn. You skip the step where you ask, what actually happened? Think about brand loyalty. A person buys a product from a company once, maybe by accident or suggestion. Later, they return to that brand. They say it's because of trust or quality, but the original choice might have been random. They don't remember that part. They remember the feeling of having chosen well, so they build around that. Or think about someone asked to explain a moral belief. They give a strong answer. Then, without knowing, the question gets flipped. The opposite belief gets framed in similar language. The person agrees again. They don't catch the shift. They justify both sides, not because they're confused, but because they think they chose both. The belief feels real because the choice feels real. This isn't rare. It happens across age groups, cultures, and settings. The cause isn't lack of awareness. It's the way memory and reasoning work together. Once the outcome is locked in, the mind favors it. That keeps the self-image stable. You remain the person who makes choices for a reason, even when the choice wasn't fully yours. That's the pull of choice blindness. It protects your sense of agency. You feel like the author of your decisions, even when the page was flipped without you noticing. You walk into a building and press the elevator button. Nothing happens. You press it again, then again. You know one press should be enough, but your finger keeps going. It feels like you're doing something. The wait feels shorter. The moment feels less helpless. That's the real purpose of the extra taps. They don't speed up the elevator. They just give your body something to do. This kind of behavior is common. It's not just elevators. You press the crosswalk button 3 times. You click a frozen app over and over. You hit close door, even though you know most of those buttons don't work. These are placebo actions. They give you the illusion of control. They don't affect the system, but they affect you. Elevator systems are programmed to respond to one signal. Press the button once, and the call is logged. Pressing it again doesn't make it arrive faster. The elevator isn't ignoring you. It's just slow, but standing still in silence feels worse than pressing a button. So you press, and press again. The motion breaks the waiting. Waiting without action feels like a gap. You're stuck. Time stretches. But a small gesture, even one with no effect, fills that space. It lets you say, I'm handling it, even if you're not. Think of someone trying to close an elevator door quickly. They jab at the close button, hoping it'll shave off a few seconds. In most cases, it won't. Many modern elevators ignore that button unless you have a service key. But the person feels better. The doors feel like they closed because of them, not just on a timer. The habit forms early. You press a button, something happens, and you link the two. That link gets reinforced, even when the connection is weak. Over time, you stop checking whether the action works. You just do it. It becomes a reflex. You see the panel, you press. The logic falls away. This kind of action is rooted in how we respond to systems that don't talk back. Machines don't explain their timing. The elevator doesn't say, "I'll be there in 12 seconds." The crosswalk doesn't say, "You already pressed this." So we keep trying. We repeat the action. Not because we expect a different outcome, but because not acting feels worse. It's not just impatience. It's about reassurance. The repeated press tells your body, you did your part. It settles the discomfort of being at the mercy of a system, even if that comfort is built on a false cause and effect. Picture someone in a lobby, late for a meeting. The elevator's taking too long. They tap the button again. They sigh. They tap harder. The wait feels personal. The second press doesn't move the elevator, but it moves their attention. They've done something. They're not passive. This behavior also appears in software. When a page loads slowly, users click again. They refresh. They tap the screen. The input doesn't speed up the process, but it keeps the hands busy. It gives the user something to blame other than the system's design or speed. The same thing happens with remote controls. The show doesn't play. You press the button again. You point it closer to the screen. You press it 3 more times. You know it should work, but the feedback isn't instant, so you take action. You fill the lag with effort. Placebo actions work because they change your internal state. They give you a role to play in a system where you usually don't have one. Elevators run on schedules. Signals are cued. Buttons are checked once and ignored after. But pressing gives you a small moment of certainty. Your finger did something. In public spaces, this behavior becomes more visible. You see others doing it. That makes it feel normal. Someone presses the elevator button 5 times, so you do too. You assume they know something you don't. That's social reinforcement. It spreads the action, even if it has no added value. Designers sometimes leave these buttons in place, even when they've been disabled. The closed door button stays, even if it's non-functional. That's intentional. Removing it makes people feel helpless. Leaving it keeps the illusion alive. A user who feels in control is easier to manage than one who feels stuck. You also see this in thermostats. Someone's cold, so they tap the up arrow. Nothing changes right away. They tap again. They go too far, then tap back down. The heat kicks on eventually. They think their taps made the difference, but most systems have delays built in. The timing was unrelated to the presses, but the belief sticks. The action becomes part of the routine. It gets folded into the story of how things work. You don't question whether the elevator would have come just as fast with one press. You remember the tap. You remember the result. That's enough for the brain to connect the two. These patterns don't come from ignorance. They come from instinct. You live in a world full of automated systems. Most of them don't ask for your input. When one offers a button, you take it. You press it because it's there. You press it again because you're still waiting. You know deep down that the elevator doesn't care, but your brain does. It needs to feel involved. It needs something to hold on to, even if that something is just a worn-out button, glowing from too many fingers trying to speed up time. You see a friend struggling. They say they feel stuck. Work is hard. Sleep is bad. Nothing feels right. You nod, and before they finish, you're offering advice. Maybe they should take a break. Maybe they should try journaling. Maybe they need a new routine. You mean well, but the advice isn't just for them. It's also for you. Giving it helps you feel useful. It gives shape to a moment that would otherwise feel powerless. Helping someone doesn't always come from strength. It often comes from your own need to escape helplessness. Watching another person's pain brings up your own fear. The fear that you wouldn't know what to do either. By offering a fix, you create distance. You're not stuck like them. You're standing beside the problem, not inside it. Advice becomes a shield. You use it to protect yourself from the feeling that some things have no easy answer. You talk, not because the solution is clear, but because silence feels worse. You fill the space with action, even if the action isn't what they need. Take someone who just lost their job. They say they don't know what to do. You suggest they update their resume, apply to 3 places a day, reframe this time as an opportunity. You say these things because they sound helpful, but often what they need isn't advice, it's time. It's space to feel confused without being fixed. Still, you push toward clarity. You can't control their situation, but you can shape the conversation. This kind of helping comes from a deep place. Humans are wired to avoid helplessness. When someone else feels it, we feel it too. That overlap makes us uncomfortable, so we try to pull them out. In doing so, we pull ourselves back to solid ground. You also see this in parents. A child is upset. The parent tries to calm them with solutions. Drink some water. Count to 10. Think of something nice. The parent isn't wrong to try, but part of the urge is internal. Watching the child in distress brings up the parent's own sense of helplessness. Solving the child's problem becomes a way to settle their own nerves. At work, this takes another shape. A coworker struggles with a deadline. You jump in with suggestions. Change the format. Skip the extra slide. Ask for an extension. You want to help, but you also want to stop feeling like the problem is spreading. You don't want their stress to become yours. Advice becomes a way to contain it. Even strangers online get this treatment. Someone posts about a hard day. The comments flood in. Try meditating. Cut out sugar. Make a list of what you're grateful for. The advice piles up. Most of it is well-meaning, but it's also a way for the commenters to cope with their own discomfort. They see pain and want to fix it, not just for the other person, but for themselves. Advice works best when it's asked for, but when we give it without being asked, it often says more about us than about the problem. It says, I need this to make sense. It says, I want to believe I'd know what to do if I were you. It says, if I solve this, maybe I won't have to feel how stuck I really am. You can test this in your own life. Think of a time when you gave advice quickly. Ask yourself, what was happening in your world? Were you in control? Were you feeling stable? Or were you also on shaky ground? Often, we give the most advice when we least want to feel uncertain ourselves. Sometimes the advice we give to others is exactly what we need to hear. We tell them to rest, but we don't rest. We tell them to take the pressure off, but we keep pushing ourselves. The advice becomes a mirror. We give it away because it's easier than applying it. Helping others is not a bad impulse, but when it becomes a reflex, it's worth slowing down. Not every hard moment needs to be solved. Some just need to be witnessed. And when we rush to offer advice, we often miss what the other person actually needs. You see this in support groups. Someone shares a story. The group stays quiet. They nod. No one interrupts. No one fixes. That space, bare and unfilled, gives the speaker room to breathe. It's hard to do that outside of structured places. Most people aren't used to sitting with discomfort. They want to sweep it into something useful. Helping can become a performance. You want to be seen as wise, supportive, calm. You want to be the one who says the thing that unlocks clarity. That's a strong urge, especially when you feel adrift in your own life. Helping becomes a way to prove you still have something to offer. But the best kind of help often sounds quiet. It sounds like, that sounds hard, or I don't know what to say, but I'm here. These responses offer no fix. They offer no illusion. They just show up. That presence is harder to maintain than advice. It requires you to sit in the unknown without grabbing at a plan. You may still offer advice, that's fine, but it's worth asking, is this for them or for me? What part of me needs this problem to be solvable? What part of me needs to be helpful right now? When you can name that, the help becomes cleaner. It doesn't carry your fear. It doesn't try to rush the moment. It meets the other person where they are, not where you need them to be. And that, more than any plan or tip, is what support actually looks like. You look back on a decision and say it was the right call. You point to how things turned out. You line up the facts so they tell a clean story. Maybe you quit a job at the right time. Maybe you picked the right school or ended the right relationship. You talk about your reasons. You explain the steps. But the truth is, you didn't know how it would end. You made the best choice you could, or maybe you made a lucky guess. Now, with the outcome in hand, the story gets sharper. That's retrospective rationalization. It's a quiet process. You don't always notice it. Something works out and your memory adjusts. The doubts you had at the time shrink. The risks fade. The logic grows stronger. You tell the story like you saw it coming. Like the result was planned. It wasn't. But your mind edits the past to protect the idea that you knew what you were doing. This happens in small choices. You buy a coat that wasn't on your list. Later, someone compliments it. You say you picked it because it goes with everything. You don't mention that you were cold, tired, and rushed. The compliment makes the choice feel smart. So the story shifts. You revise the moment to match the result. It shows up more clearly in big life changes. Someone moves across the country without much of a plan. They say they needed a change. A year later, they've built a new routine. They've made it work. So they talk about the move like it was a well-timed life decision. But at the time, they weren't sure. They just didn't want to stay where they were. The move didn't come from clarity. It came from discomfort. But the new story hides that. People also use this with career paths. A person jumps from one job to another. At the time, it's messy. They feel lost. But later, they land somewhere that fits. So they trace a clean path backwards. They say each step taught them something. They say it all made sense. The confusion gets deleted. The story becomes tight. Retrospective rationalization isn't about lying. It's about alignment. You want your past to match your present. You want the story to look like it moved in one direction. That makes you feel like you've been in charge, like you weren't just reacting or drifting. You were deciding. You also do this when you try to explain your past to others. If the story sounds thoughtful, you sound thoughtful. If it sounds lucky, you sound lucky. Most people want to sound like they had a plan, so they describe one. They map it out after the fact. They frame mistakes as lessons. They say, "I'm glad that happened." Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're just grateful it ended well. This editing also helps you avoid regret. If you can explain why something happened the way it did, it hurts less. You don't have to wonder if a better choice was possible. You just tell yourself you chose what made sense. That keeps you from circling back, questioning yourself. It settles the tension. Imagine someone who ended a relationship they weren't sure about. At the time, they debated for weeks. They felt torn. They questioned if they were expecting too much. But once they're in a new relationship that feels easier, they say the old one was clearly wrong. They call it incompatible. They say they saw the signs. They may have seen some of them, but they also spent a long time unsure. Now the story doesn't include that part. Or think of a person who never finished college. They struggled with the choice for years. They weren't sure if they should go back. Later, they build a successful business. They say school wasn't for them. They say they always knew they'd do better on their own. But that certainty didn't exist at the time. The new success rewrites the old confusion. This kind of rationalization is common in group settings too. A team changes direction after a rough quarter. The new plan works. Later, they say it was the right strategic move, but they don't talk about how unsure they were when they made it. They don't mention the internal disagreements or how close they came to sticking with the old plan. The narrative shifts to make the team look decisive. It's also tied to memory. You don't store every thought you had during a decision. You store a few key points. Later, you fill in the rest. You think you remember the choice clearly, but what you really remember is how you feel about it now. That feeling colors the memory. It makes it smoother. It removes the parts that no longer fit. Sometimes this process even reshapes your values. You make a choice that goes against what you used to believe, but it turns out well, so you change the belief, not to be dishonest, but to stay consistent. You tell yourself you've grown. You say your values evolved. Maybe they did. Maybe they just bent to make the outcome seem right. Retrospective rationalization feels good. It makes life make sense, but it can also get in the way. If you always revise the past to fit the present, you lose track of what uncertainty felt like. You forget how many times you didn't know what to do. That makes it harder to empathize with people who are still in that place. It makes you think you've always been more confident than you really were. You also risk repeating mistakes. If the past gets edited too neatly, you don't learn from it. You skip over the messy parts. You assume they were all part of the plan, so you don't ask hard questions about how you really made your choices. You don't slow down to see what actually worked and what just happened to work. Looking back, most decisions seem clearer than they were, but that clarity often comes after the fact. You can't always see the path while you're on it. You just walk it. You do your best. Then when you look back, you tell a story that makes sense. Not because it's fully true, but because it feels good to believe you meant to go this way all along. You see someone hurting. Maybe they drink too much or stay in a job that drains them. Maybe they won't leave a relationship that clearly isn't working. You talk to them. You offer support. You make suggestions. You check in. At first, it feels like care. You want them to feel better. But somewhere along the way, your care shifts. You start trying to fix them. Trying to fix someone looks like help, but it's not the same. Helping means meeting someone where they are. Fixing means pushing them where you think they should be. The difference is subtle, but it matters. Helping respects choice. Fixing tries to steer it. This usually starts with good intent. You see someone stuck. They repeat the same mistake. You tell yourself they don't see what you see. You think that if you explain it right, or show enough love, or apply the right kind of pressure, they'll change. You imagine your influence can tip the balance. It feels like you're helping, but more often, you're trying to manage their life to quiet your own discomfort. Watching someone suffer brings up helplessness. You want the pain to end, not just for them, but for you. So you act. You give advice. You make plans for them. You tell yourself you're doing the right thing. But under the surface, you're asking them to make you feel better by getting better. You might text often, ask for updates, follow their habits, remind them what they said they'd do. You treat them like a project. When they slip, you feel frustrated. You think they're not trying hard enough. You start to carry the outcome as your own. If they change, you feel proud. If they don't, you feel like you failed. But they're not yours to fix. You can't make someone want what you want. You can't carry them across a line they don't want to cross. Change doesn't come from pressure. It comes from readiness. And no amount of insight or love can force that moment to arrive. Sometimes people lean on emotional pressure. They say things like, "I'm doing this because I care," or "It hurts me to watch you go through this." Those words are honest, but they often land as control. The message underneath is, "I need you to get better so I can stop feeling powerless." That's not love. That's a transaction. Think about someone with a friend in a toxic relationship. The friend vents all the time. They say they want out. They cry. They doubt. The listener responds with advice. Leave them. Set boundaries. Think clearly. The friend agrees, then goes back. The cycle repeats. The listener grows angry, not because they don't care, but because they've confused support with influence. Or take someone who wants their partner to quit drinking. They beg. They offer books. They monitor behavior. They speak with urgency. They say it's ruining things. They aren't wrong. But unless the partner chooses to change, nothing sticks. No speech, no strategy, no emotional plea can make that decision for them. Fixing is often about control. You want to believe that if you say the right thing or love someone the right way, they'll transform. That keeps you from facing the truth that people change only when they're ready, not before. This is hard to accept because it feels passive. Standing by while someone spirals goes against instinct. You want to protect. You want to interrupt the damage. But the more you push, the more they may resist. Not because they want to suffer, but because being managed feels like a loss of self. People aren't puzzles. They're not broken machines. They're people. They hear advice through their own filters. They move at their own pace. What looks clear to you might feel impossible to them. What feels urgent to you might not feel urgent to them yet. Trying to fix someone also creates a power imbalance. It puts you above them. You become the one who knows best. That creates resentment, even if they don't say it. They feel judged. They feel watched. They stop opening up. They learn that your care comes with conditions. You can see this in families. A parent pushes a child toward therapy, school, sobriety. They think love means direction, but the child feels pressure, not safety. The relationship becomes a project. The parent wants success. The child wants space. Even when the goals match, the dynamic erodes trust. In friendships, the same thing happens. One person always offers solutions. They talk about growth, goals, mindset. They mean well. But the other person just wanted to be heard. They start to feel small under the weight of constant improvement. There's a difference between being present and being in charge. You can say, "I care about you. I'm here when you need me." That offers support without demand. You can ask, "What do you need right now?" instead of saying, "Here's what you should do." That leaves room for the other person to lead. Sometimes the best thing you can say is nothing. Just sit with them. Just listen. Just let them feel seen without being directed. That's not passive. That's restraint. That's trust. You're saying, "I believe you'll find your way. I'm not here to fix you. I'm here with you." Fixing feels powerful. It gives you a role. But that role is built on the illusion that you know better. And even if you do, that's not always enough. Most people don't change because they were told to. They change because something inside them shifts. Your job is not to force that shift. It's to be steady until it comes. You say you'll finish the project by Friday. You believe it. You map out your week, block off time, and feel ready. But Friday comes and it's not done. You ran into problems. Someone didn't reply. You had to redo a section. You tell yourself this time was different, but it's not. You've done this before. You underestimated how long it would take. That's the planning fallacy. The planning fallacy is the tendency to think things will go faster than they do. You believe you're being realistic. You think you've learned from the past. But again, you miss the mark. You ignore delays. You overrate focus. You imagine a version of yourself that doesn't get tired or distracted. You make a plan for that version, not the real one. This shows up in all kinds of tasks. You think you can write a report in 2 hours. It takes 4. You think you can move apartments in a day. You end up unpacking for a week. You start a side project on a weekend, expecting to launch it soon. Months pass. You've done each of these things before. You've seen how time stretches. But each time, you think, this one's different. One reason this happens is optimism. You want to believe you'll work at your best. You picture clear blocks of time. No interruptions. No second guessing. You don't account for friction. You forget that even simple tasks often take longer than expected. Not because they're hard, but because life gets in the way. Take someone planning to paint a room. They say it'll take a few hours. They picture rolling color on the walls. They don't think about taping edges, moving furniture, or drying time. So when the day ends and the job isn't done, they feel surprised. They blame poor timing. But the issue was in the estimate, not the day. Students do this with schoolwork. They think a paper will take 1 night. They plan for 4 hours. They forget about outlining, research, editing. They picture the writing going smoothly. But once they sit down, the words don't come. They stare, they scroll. Then they rush. The work gets done late, and they promise to plan better next time. But next time, the same plan repeats. Teams fall into this trap together. A manager sets a deadline. Everyone agrees it sounds reasonable. But no one checks how long similar projects took in the past. No one builds in margin for changes. They move ahead, they fall behind. They push back the launch. They say it was unexpected, but it wasn't. They just didn't look close enough. Part of the problem is how memory works. You remember what you planned, not what happened. You don't track all the small delays. You forget how many things had to be redone. You recall the start and the finish, but not the long middle. So when you estimate next time, you lean on the ideal version. You plan for the smooth part, not the full process. Another factor is social pressure. You don't want to say something will take a long time. You want to seem efficient. So you round down. You set tight goals. You show ambition. But that ambition becomes a trap. You miss the deadline and look less reliable. You feel like you failed, even though the original plan was flawed from the start. This bias even affects professionals who should know better. Contractors, developers, writers, researchers. They all build timelines. They all miss them, not because they're careless, but because they discount the unexpected. They build schedules for perfect weeks. Then they face real ones. Some people try to fix this with padding. They add extra time to each task. They call it buffer. That helps a little, but often it's still not enough, because the padding gets swallowed by the same blind spots. A task that should take 1 hour takes 3. You padded to 2. You still run out. One better approach is reference class forecasting. That means looking at similar past projects, not how they felt, but how long they actually took. You measure outcomes, not intentions. If writing a grant took 15 hours last time, start with 15 as your estimate this time. Not 10, not 8. And don't assume you've improved unless you have proof. You can also break the work into smaller parts. Not write report, but outline sections, draft intro, edit tables. Then you estimate each part. That makes it harder to gloss over time. You see where the effort goes. You make more honest plans. Another way to fight the bias is to build in slack. Not as a buffer, but as space. Assume you won't work at full speed. Assume there will be questions, slow replies, days you're off. That's not failure. That's how work often goes. Planning for it makes the schedule more honest. The planning fallacy isn't about being lazy or unrealistic. It's about being human. You think ahead with hope. You believe in your own efficiency. You trust the future version of yourself to do better. That version might show up, but often it doesn't. And even when it does, the world doesn't always cooperate. You keep underestimating because it feels better than overestimating. A short timeline feels sharp. It feels productive, but it hides the truth. It sets you up to feel behind. You plan based on how you want it to go, not how it usually does. And when it doesn't go that way, you blame the moment. But the problem was in the plan. And the plan was built on a version of you that only exists in theory. You're overwhelmed. Your mind feels crowded. Work is piling up. You haven't returned messages, and everything feels one step behind. You don't start with the hardest task. You start with your desk. You wipe it down. You throw away pens that don't work. You put the clutter in a drawer and close it. The drawer is full, but the surface is clear. You feel lighter. Not fixed, but lighter. That's the pull of a decluttering frenzy. When things inside feel scattered, you shift to what you can control. The drawer, the closet, the kitchen counter. You move objects, toss things, label bins. The action is fast. The reward is immediate. It feels like solving something, even when the real problem stays untouched. This kind of cleaning isn't about dirt. It's about relief. You walk into a messy room and it reflects how you feel. You clean it and it looks like progress. It tells you that something got better. You haven't made the hard call or had the tough talk, but you organized your books. You set your world in order, at least the part you can see. It often begins with small triggers. You read a stressful email, then suddenly you're pulling everything out of the pantry. You open your calendar and feel behind, then reach for the junk drawer. You can't change the email or the deadline, but you can clear the counter. It's not rational, it's physical. You need to act. There's also a kind of performance in it. A clean space signals control. If someone visits and your kitchen is spotless, They don't ask how you're doing. They see the surface and assume you're fine. You might even believe it yourself. The image helps you hold the line. This doesn't mean the cleaning is fake. It feels real because it is. Your brain reacts to clean lines and order. You see less visual noise and you feel calmer. That calm is helpful. But when the pace is frantic and the impulse sudden, it's less about function and more about escape. People often do this before a big decision. They feel pressure building and look for a way to delay. They clean the garage. They reorganize the fridge. The tasks feel urgent in the moment, but they're not urgent. They're just easier to complete. You get a result without facing risk. The same happens during grief or heartbreak. Someone feels heavy and numb. Then one day, they clean everything. They donate clothes, delete files, scrub floors. The space feels new. For a moment, they do too. But often, they're just trying to reset something without having to sit with the loss. Even watching others declutter can bring comfort. That's why organizing videos are so popular. You see a mess become clean in under a minute. There's no pain, no conflict, no confusion, just order. It gives you the sense that life can be managed, that everything can go back in the right place. But sometimes the rush to throw things out becomes compulsive. You toss useful items just to make the pile smaller. You feel guilty for keeping things that take up space. You think less clutter means more clarity. But that's not always true. The drawer isn't the problem. It's what the drawer lets you avoid. Think of someone who feels stuck in their job. Every Sunday, they reorganize their bedroom. They fold clothes tighter. They move books. They swap furniture. They tell themselves they're being productive. And they are. But they haven't updated their resume. They haven't thought through what they want. The work looks like progress, but it's just movement. You also see this in people chasing minimalist trends. They think owning less will make them feel more in control. Sometimes it helps, but other times it's just another way to avoid internal questions. What do I really want? Why am I anxious? What am I afraid to face? Decluttering becomes a loop. You feel off, so you clean. You feel better, so you stop thinking about what's wrong. Then it comes back. You clean again. Each round buys you peace, but not clarity. The deeper work waits behind the next drawer. There's nothing wrong with cleaning. Sometimes you need the clear space to think. Sometimes wiping the counter helps more than writing in a journal. But when the pace becomes frantic, when you clean instead of rest, instead of reflect, that's the signal to slow down. Some people realize this in the middle of it. They're halfway through sorting cables and suddenly ask, "What am I doing?" The task made sense when they started, but it was just a mask. The mess wasn't the thing that needed fixing. You can even see it during arguments. A couple fights, one person storms off and starts wiping down surfaces. They slam drawers, vacuum corners. It looks like anger, but it's fear. They don't know how to repair the moment, so they restore something else. Decluttering works best when it supports a larger process, not when it replaces it. You can clean your desk and also write the hard email. You can sort your closet and still sit with the discomfort you're trying to ignore. But if the cleaning always comes first, if it always comes instead, then it's not care, it's avoidance. The space will always be there. So will the drawer, the counter, the closet. They're not bad places to start. Just don't confuse a clean room with a clear mind. One is easier to achieve. The other takes more time. You can wipe the surface in an hour. What's underneath may take longer. You unlock your phone and start dragging apps. You make folders. You rename them. You move them to the second screen, then back to the first. You delete a few, download one or two. It doesn't take long, but it feels like something changed. You didn't answer emails. You didn't fix what's bothering you, but your screen looks clean. That's the relief. The mess is still there, just not in front of you. Digital organizing often starts when everything else feels scattered. You can't focus. You don't know what to do next, so you sort. Not your priorities, but your files. Not your habits, but your app layout. You change the order of icons and feel like you've made progress. The system looks different, so it feels like you've moved forward. This shows up in small ways. You change your wallpaper. You delete old downloads. You rename documents that haven't been opened in months. You aren't solving problems. You're creating the appearance of structure. And that appearance is soothing. The logic behind it is simple. When you can't change your mood or control your situation, you adjust your environment. And in a digital world, the environment lives in your pocket. It's your home screen, your cloud folders, your calendar layout. When life feels unstable, organizing digital space becomes a stand-in for control. Take someone who's behind at work. They feel overwhelmed. They open their laptop and spend half an hour creating a new folder system. Client A, Client B, to do, later. They move things around. They don't do the work, but they handle the files. They don't answer the hard question. They just give it a new label. That structure gives them a small win. It's like wiping the desk before sitting down. The problem hasn't changed, but now it feels more approachable. The clutter becomes order, at least for a moment. People also use this tactic during transitions. A student finishes the semester. Instead of resting, they organize every folder from every class. They back up old notes. They make a plan for next term. The academic work is done, but the mental closure hasn't happened yet. So they keep moving pieces around. It's a way to stay in motion while the mind catches up. Even app folders can serve this role. Someone creates a wellness folder and fills it with meditation apps, journaling tools, fitness trackers. They may not open those apps, but having them grouped together feels like preparation. It signals intention. It says, I'm working on myself, even if the effort hasn't started. You can see the same thing with email inboxes. A person marks everything unread as dealt with. They move messages into color-coded folders. They don't respond, but they sort. The inbox becomes manageable, not through action, but through order. The stress fades, not because anything changed, but because the screen no longer reflects the chaos. This behavior also shows up with photo libraries. Someone spends an hour deleting duplicates, organizing albums, tagging faces. They're not revisiting memories. They're managing space. They're turning a messy archive into something clean. The process feels productive. It's not about nostalgia. It's about control. The comfort comes from the rules. Files can be renamed. Apps can be moved. Photos can be sorted. There's no confusion about how to do it. No emotions to navigate. You don't have to talk to anyone. You just tap, drag, and drop. The task is clear. The goal is simple. Digital sorting can also act as a delay tactic. A person wants to start a creative project, but doesn't know how. They spend time organizing tools, updating software, renaming old drafts. They stay close to the work without touching it. It looks like progress, but it's still avoidance. There's also the urge to match the inner life to the outer display. If you're anxious, a cluttered screen makes it worse. If you're uncertain, random file names make the feeling louder. So you clean it up. You give the device a story your brain can accept. You turn miscellaneous into labeled folders. You delete the apps you haven't used in 6 months. You leave behind something that feels simpler. Some people do this late at night. They can't sleep. They're restless. They reach for their phone and start organizing. They don't know what else to do with the tension. So they clean the icons. They adjust their reminders. It helps, not for long, but long enough to fall asleep. Others use it after conflict. A hard conversation ends. The next hour is spent cleaning out Google Drive or rearranging the task manager. It's a way to reestablish ground. You can't go back and fix the words you said, but you can put order somewhere. Digital spaces are extensions of thought. When those spaces are neat, the mind feels clearer. When they're messy, stress gets louder. So we sort, not always to be efficient, but to feel ready. The goal isn't speed, it's structure. There's no harm in doing it, but it can become a pattern. If every time you feel overwhelmed, you start deleting screenshots, the core issue stays untouched. The screen gets cleaner. The inbox looks better, but the task, the feeling, the choice, that's still waiting. Digital organizing works best when it supports real action, when it clears the way. But when it replaces action, it turns into a ritual of false starts. The folders look good, the files are in order, but nothing important has moved forward. The structure is done. The hard part is still ahead. You wake up and reach for your phone. You open the weather app. It says 72 degrees, partly cloudy, with a chance of rain in the afternoon. You check again before leaving the house. You look at the forecast at noon, then at 3 p.m. The rain never shows. Still, you keep checking. The data changes. The forecast updates. You feel more informed, but not more in control. You know the weather won't change because you checked the app, but checking feels necessary. This is common with weather and news apps. We open them multiple times a day, hoping to understand what's coming. We want to prepare. We want to avoid surprises. But the more we check, the less influence we actually have. We confuse knowing with controlling. Weather, for example, is complex and unpredictable. Meteorologists use models that update constantly as new data comes in. Forecasts improve over time, but they never become perfect. A chance of rain means rain might fall, or it might not. Checking the app often doesn't change that. It just changes what you expect. Still, we check. We want to feel ready. If the app says rain, we bring an umbrella. If it says clear skies, we plan a walk. That's helpful. But when checking becomes frequent, every hour, every notification, it shifts from preparation to ritual. News apps work similarly. They deliver updates on politics, economy, and world events. The information matters. It shapes how we think and act. But when we refresh the feed dozens of times a day, we're not just gathering facts. We're seeking reassurance. We want to feel like we understand what's happening and that we can respond. The problem is, many events are beyond our reach. A policy change, a stock market move, a global crisis, none can be stopped by refreshing a screen. But we keep looking. We feel anxious, so we check again. We feel powerless, so we look for clues. The data flows in, but control doesn't. Imagine someone worried about a storm. They check the forecast every few hours. The updates don't ease the worry. Sometimes the predicted path changes. The storm shifts east or west. Each change triggers a new response. Cancel plans, buy supplies, check again. The cycle repeats. The person gains information, but loses peace. Or consider a person tracking economic news. The market drops. They refresh their app repeatedly. Each time, the number changes. The fear grows. The desire to act intensifies. Yet the action options are limited. The market moves fast. The individual feels at the mercy of forces too big to influence. Checking apps like this also fragments attention. You open the news to check a headline, then click another story, then another. Before you know it, you've spent time scrolling through anxiety-inducing content. The habit doesn't clarify the world, it clouds your mind. This behavior comes from a natural need to reduce uncertainty. The unknown feels risky. The unknown triggers stress. Checking apps feels like shrinking that unknown. The more data you have, the smaller the unknown seems. But the unknown never disappears. You just chase it. Sometimes, checking apps replaces action. Instead of planning for a storm, you refresh the forecast endlessly. Instead of focusing on your daily goals, you dive into the newsfeed repeatedly. It feels productive, like you're staying informed, but you're mostly reacting to information instead of controlling your time. Notifications worsen this cycle. Apps push alerts designed to bring you back. A breaking story, a sudden temperature drop. These alerts pull your attention constantly. They train you to expect updates, to check often. The rhythm becomes automatic. You don't ask if it's useful, you just respond. In social settings, this habit affects conversation too. People mention a news item they just read or complain about the weather. But the underlying feeling is shared. We want to feel on top of things. We want to avoid being blindsided. We share updates as a way to connect, but also as a way to reassure ourselves. The illusion of control created by constant checking can be a double-edged sword. On one side, having timely information helps with planning and safety. On the other, the compulsion to check can increase stress. The more you watch, the less calm you feel. The world appears more chaotic, not less. It's helpful to pause and ask, does this information change what I do? If not, am I checking to prepare or just to feel less anxious? Does the app help me act or just distract me? Sometimes, stepping away reduces worry more than scrolling more data. A useful strategy is to set limits. Check the weather once in the morning. Check news updates once or twice a day. Avoid notifications that aren't critical. Use the information you need to plan your day, not to fill time or soothe anxiety. Remember, the weather and news don't respond to your checking. The rain will fall regardless. The market will move regardless. But your peace of mind depends on how you respond. You gain real influence not by scrolling more, but by deciding how to use what you see. The apps provide data. You provide context. Together, that can help, but only if you don't mistake data for control. Knowing is not the same as shaping. And the moment you realize that, you regain your calm. You hear the news. A company's stock drops sharply. You shake your head and say, I knew it was going to happen. You didn't say that before the drop, but now it feels obvious. You remember the signs, the missed earnings, the leadership changes, the bad reviews. You tell yourself you saw it coming all along. That's the I knew it effect. This effect happens when we look back on an event and convince ourselves we predicted it. The outcome is clear, so our memories adjust. We recall clues as if they were signals. We overlook the uncertainty we felt at the time. The event feels less surprising because we now know the result. It's natural. The mind likes stories that make sense. When things turn out a certain way, we want to believe we understood it. We want to feel smart, prepared, in control. Saying I knew it restores confidence, even if it's misplaced. Take someone following a sports team. Before a game, they have doubts. They aren't sure who will win. After the team loses, they say, I knew they were going to lose. Their defense was weak. That claim sounds confident. But before the game, the outcome wasn't clear. They guessed, hoped, or worried. Now, the loss feels predictable. Or think of an investor watching a market dip. The crash shocks everyone. The investor says, I warned people this was coming, but those warnings were vague or unshared. The drop makes them feel right in hindsight. They didn't have perfect foresight. They have hindsight's advantage. The I knew it effect also colors how we see warnings. When a disaster happens, an earthquake, a scandal, a political upset, we say, the signs were there. We point to ignored reports, ignored experts, ignored warnings. But before the event, those signs were just pieces of information among many. They weren't clear predictions. They weren't certain. After the fact, they seem obvious. This effect leads to overconfidence. If we think we always knew what would happen, we might underestimate real risk. We believe our judgment is better than it is. We trust our instincts too much. We forget how much luck plays a role. At work, this shows up in project reviews. A team misses a deadline. Someone says, I told you the timeline was too tight. It sounds like wisdom, but if they truly knew, why didn't they speak up sooner? The difference is that now the problem is visible. Before, it was a guess. In personal relationships, this effect affects how we judge past choices. After a breakup, you might say, I saw it coming. You point to moments of doubt or conflict. But while you were in the relationship, those moments felt manageable or uncertain. The end made them clear signals, not just possibilities. The I knew it effect can also distort how we share stories. People want to appear insightful. Saying you predicted an event makes you seem sharp. It gives you social credit, but it rewrites your past thoughts. It turns guesses into facts. Psychologists call this hindsight bias. It's not about lying. It's about how memory works. The brain favors coherence. It fits pieces into a neat picture. That picture feels true, even if it changes the original story. This bias can have consequences. Investors might make riskier bets. Leaders might ignore advice, thinking they already know. Individuals might blame themselves or others unfairly. They might expect predictability where there is none. To see through the effect, it helps to ask, did I say this before it happened? Did I share this view in real time? Did I act on this knowledge? If the answer is no, the claim "I knew it" is probably a memory shaped by hindsight. Another way to test this is to imagine a different outcome. Could the event have gone another way? Did others predict that? If the answer is yes, then your certainty after the fact is overstated. The future was never fixed. Accepting uncertainty doesn't weaken you. It shows honesty. It helps you make better plans. You recognize that some things can't be foreseen. You build resilience instead of false confidence. The next time something surprising happens, notice your reaction. Do you say, "I knew that would happen"? Or do you say, "That was unexpected, but I can learn from it"? The difference shapes how you see the world and yourself. "I knew it" is a tempting story. It comforts and reassures, but it hides the messiness of reality. Life rarely offers clear signs. It's full of chance and complexity. The sooner you accept that, the more grounded you become. You ask someone how they're doing. They smile and say, "I'm fine." Maybe their voice sounds flat, or their eyes look tired. Maybe their shoulders are tense. But the words are quick and firm. "I'm fine." It's a phrase we hear often. We say it often. It's become a way to show control over feelings, even when control isn't really there. Saying "I'm fine" feels like strength. It's a way to keep emotions locked inside. You don't want to seem weak or vulnerable. You don't want to burden others. You want to appear steady, capable, in charge. "I'm fine" acts as a shield. It says, "I'm handling it." But that doesn't mean the feelings are gone. It just means they're hidden. Emotional suppression is common. People learn early that some feelings aren't welcome. Sadness, anger, fear, these don't always fit with social expectations. So instead of showing them, people say, "I'm fine." It becomes a habit, not just a response. Imagine someone having a tough day at work. Their project ran into problems. A client was upset. Deadlines slipped. When a friend asks how they are, the answer is "fine." The truth is closer to frustration or exhaustion, but those words stay quiet. They believe hiding those feelings means staying in control. But control and suppression aren't the same. This gap causes tension. The more feelings get bottled up, the harder it is to stay steady. The person might feel calm on the surface, but inside, stress grows. They might have trouble sleeping or focusing. They may snap at someone unexpectedly. The emotional pressure doesn't disappear, it just builds. Saying "I'm fine" can also shut down connection. When someone asks genuinely, they want to understand, they want to offer support. But hearing "I'm fine" stops the conversation. It says, "Don't ask." Over time, this creates distance. The person feels more alone, even in company. Sometimes people say "I'm fine" because they don't know how to explain their feelings. Emotions are complex. They don't come in neat packages. They're mixed, confusing, shifting. Saying "I'm fine" is easier than trying to untangle all that inside. It's a simple response to a complicated question. Others say it out of habit. They've learned that expressing emotion feels risky. Maybe they were told to toughen up. Maybe they saw others hide feelings. It becomes a default. The words don't reflect how they truly feel. They just fill the space. This behavior also links to culture. Some places prize stoicism. Others encourage openness. Depending on your environment, saying "I'm fine" can carry different meanings. But everywhere, it often masks what's really happening. You see this in relationships too. One partner asks how the other is. The answer is fine, even if things feel rough. The silence that follows can cause frustration. One person feels unheard, the other feels exposed. Neither gets what they need. The phrase becomes a barrier instead of a bridge. It's worth noting that saying "I'm fine" isn't always bad. Sometimes people truly are okay. Sometimes they don't want to talk about it. Sometimes privacy matters. The issue arises when "I'm fine" is a cover for struggle. Learning to say more can be powerful. It doesn't require sharing everything. It can be as simple as "I'm a little tired" or "It's been a hard day." These phrases invite connection without oversharing. They show honesty. They show control, real control over your emotional story. When you practice this, you free yourself from carrying feelings alone. You open space for others to understand and support you. That support doesn't fix everything, but it helps. It eases the weight. It makes emotions manageable, not invisible. The next time you hear "I'm fine," listen for what's behind it. The person might be guarding pain. They might be tired of explaining. They might want to say more, but don't know how. Offer patience. Offer presence. And when you say "I'm fine," check in with yourself. Are you really okay? Or are you hiding? What might happen if you said a little more? Sometimes the smallest truth opens the door to relief. Saying "I'm fine" feels like control because it limits what others see. But true control comes from being honest with yourself and others. It comes from making space for all your feelings, not just the easy ones. Emotional honesty doesn't weaken you. It makes you stronger. It builds trust, deepens relationships, and lightens your burden. It means you're not just surviving, you're living. You wake up on an important day. Before you get out of bed, you put on your lucky socks. You tie your shoes the same way you always do. You take a deep breath and walk out the door, feeling ready. The socks don't change the outcome. They don't make your presentation better or your interview go smoother. But wearing them feels important. It feels like you've set something right. That's the power of illusory superstitions. Illusory superstitions happen when we link rituals or objects to good or bad outcomes, even when there's no real connection. We believe that crossing our fingers helps a wish come true, or that knocking on wood keeps trouble away. These habits don't change reality, but they change how we feel about it. Take a baseball player who taps the plate 3 times before stepping up to bat, or a student who always studies with the same pen, or someone who flips a coin for a decision but won't let the coin land on tails. These acts aren't about logic or evidence. They're about creating a sense of control when things feel uncertain. We create these rituals because life is unpredictable. We want to reduce anxiety. We want to believe that by doing certain things, we influence the outcome. Even small rituals can provide comfort. They become anchors when the stakes are high. For example, a runner might wear a specific shirt for every race. They believe it brings good luck. The shirt doesn't improve their speed, but it helps focus their mind. It creates confidence. That mental state can actually improve performance more than the shirt itself. Illusory superstitions can also involve objects. People carry charms, wear special jewelry, or keep tokens in their pockets. These objects gain meaning over time. The connection between the item and success grows stronger with every event that goes well. The mind looks for patterns, even if the link is random. Sometimes these superstitions come from early experiences. Maybe you won a game while wearing a certain hat. That hat becomes special. You keep wearing it in similar situations. The hat is a symbol. It reminds you of success and helps you believe it can happen again. At times, superstitions spread socially. A group adopts a ritual before a big event. They clap a certain way, chant a phrase, or touch a particular object. These shared rituals build team spirit. They offer a sense of unity. Even if the acts don't influence the outcome, they strengthen bonds. However, relying too much on superstitions can backfire. If someone believes their luck depends on an object, losing or forgetting it can cause panic or distraction. They might feel less confident, even though nothing actually changed. Their belief limits them. Illusory superstitions don't usually harm anyone. They're personal and often private. They can reduce stress, but it's important to recognize when they replace real preparation. Wearing lucky socks won't make up for lack of practice. Tapping a table won't fix a poorly planned project. Understanding that these rituals don't control the world helps us balance comfort with reality. You can keep the lucky charm and still work hard. You can say the chant and still study the material. The superstition becomes a tool, not a rule. We all fall into these patterns because the human mind seeks order. It wants to feel that our actions matter. When things are uncertain, rituals fill the gap. They don't solve problems, but they soothe the mind. The key is knowing the difference between what rituals do and what they don't. They help us manage fear and doubt. They offer focus and calm. But the outcomes depend on many factors beyond any ritual or object. When you see someone tap the bat or adjust their hat, you're watching more than superstition. You're seeing a coping strategy. You're witnessing an attempt to gain control over chaos. Superstitions become meaningful stories we tell ourselves. They connect moments of success with habits or things. Those stories help us feel capable in moments when we might otherwise feel powerless. They remind us that sometimes what matters isn't changing the outcome, but changing how we face it. The ritual is less about magic and more about mindset. So when you find yourself tapping wood or wearing a lucky item, understand it's your mind's way of steadying itself. It's a quiet reminder that even if you can't control everything, you can create a sense of control inside your own head. That sense can make all the difference in how you approach the next challenge. You invest in a new business. The market soars, and your investment doubles. You tell yourself it was a smart choice. You say you made the right call. The outcome was good, so the decision must have been good. But the truth isn't so simple. Sometimes luck plays a bigger role than skill. When we judge decisions based only on outcomes, we fall into outcome bias. Outcome bias means we judge the quality of a decision by how it turned out, not by how good the decision was at the time it was made. If things end well, we praise the choice. If they end badly, we blame the decision. But the outcome doesn't always reflect the quality of the decision. Sometimes, good decisions lead to bad outcomes. Sometimes, bad decisions turn out well. Think about a gambler who bets on red at a roulette table. The ball lands on red 5 times in a row. The gambler feels clever. They say, "I knew it was the right bet." But the bet had no better chance than any other. The good outcome was pure chance. The gambler's confidence grows, but it's based on randomness. In business, outcome bias is common. A company launches a risky product. It succeeds wildly. Leaders say the decision was brilliant. But what if the market had shifted? What if a competitor hadn't delayed their launch? The success may owe as much to timing and luck as to strategy. On the other hand, a company may make careful, thoughtful plans, but face an unexpected crisis, a supply chain failure, a sudden regulation, or a public relations disaster. The outcome is bad. People say the decision was poor, but the leaders might have made the best possible choices with the information they had. This bias also shows up in everyday life. You decide to take a new route home. You get stuck in traffic for an hour. You call the decision bad. Next day, the same route is clear, and you get home quickly. You call that decision smart, but the route didn't change. The outcome did. Outcome bias leads us to overestimate how much control we have. We believe that because a choice worked, we made it well. Because it failed, we made it poorly. We forget that outcomes depend on factors beyond our control: luck, timing, other people's actions. The bias can be dangerous. It encourages overconfidence. You might keep making risky decisions because some worked out. You might avoid good opportunities because one didn't pay off. You judge others unfairly, blaming them for failures they couldn't predict. It also affects how we learn. If we only study successful outcomes, we miss understanding why some good decisions fail and some poor ones succeed. True learning comes from separating the quality of the decision from the result. Imagine a coach picking a strategy for a game. The strategy is solid. It fits the team's strengths, but the opposing team surprises them. They lose. The crowd says the coach made a bad choice, but the coach made the best decision with what they knew. The outcome was bad, but the decision was not necessarily flawed. This bias shows up in courts too. Juries may judge actions based on results rather than intent or reasoning. A doctor's decision that harms a patient may seem bad because of the result, even if the choice was appropriate and carefully made. Recognizing outcome bias means judging decisions by the process, not just the result. It means asking, was the choice reasonable at the time? Did it consider available information? Did it follow good judgment principles? The answer matters more than how things turned out. When you think about your own choices, try to separate feelings about the outcome from facts about the decision. A good result doesn't prove you were right. A bad result doesn't prove you were wrong. Sometimes you did your best, and luck was just part of the equation. This mindset helps you stay humble. It helps you stay curious. It helps you avoid the trap of thinking you control everything. It opens space for learning from both success and failure. In the end, outcomes are stories we tell ourselves, but good decisions are made before outcomes unfold. Judging by results alone is like rating a map by whether it led you into a park or a swamp. Sometimes the path is right, even if the weather turns bad. Sometimes the path is wrong, even if the sun shines. Outcome bias makes us forget that. It's a comforting illusion of control, but seeing past it is a step toward clearer thinking and wiser choices. You open an app to pick a theme. There are 10 options: light, dark, blue, green, minimalist, bold. You scroll through them, tap a few, settle on one that feels right. You smile. You customized your experience. You made a choice. It feels like freedom, but really, you just picked from a menu. That's the customization illusion. The customization illusion happens when you believe you're creating something unique, but you're really choosing between pre-made options. The options might seem endless, but they're all designed for you. The choice feels real because it's yours to make. But the freedom is limited. Think about ordering a sandwich. You see a menu with 5 bread types, 6 cheeses, and 8 fillings. You pick one of each. The result tastes good, but it's still a sandwich made from set ingredients. You didn't invent the sandwich. You just chose what the shop offers. This illusion is everywhere. You choose a phone case from dozens of styles, but all are mass-produced. You pick a playlist from curated lists, not your own songs. You select workout routines from apps, not a personal plan. The options look like variety, but they're boxed in. Companies use this to make you feel involved. Giving choices feels engaging. It builds trust. It makes you stay longer. But too much illusion can backfire. When you realize the freedom isn't real, you feel tricked. Take software interfaces. They offer themes, fonts, and layouts. You tweak settings to make it yours. But the tweaks only change colors or sizes. The structure, the flow, the core functions stay the same. You feel like a designer, but you're just picking taint. In marketing, brands promise personalized experiences. You answer a few questions, and they suggest products. You choose based on those suggestions, but the range is limited. The personalization is really just guided selection within fixed options. Even in social media, this shows up. You pick filters for photos. You pick emojis for reactions. You pick from predefined stories. The choices make you feel expressive, but only within narrow limits. This illusion matters because it shapes how we think about freedom. We believe choice equals freedom, but freedom requires meaningful options. If all the options come from the same place or serve the same purpose, your freedom is more about feeling than fact. Imagine a person shopping for a car online. The site offers dozens of colors, trims, and packages. The shopper spends hours deciding. They feel in control. But every car is built on the same platform, with the same engine options. The freedom to choose a color or add heated seats feels like real freedom. But the big decisions, the design, the performance, are fixed. This illusion can lead to decision fatigue. Too many choices feel overwhelming. You want to pick the perfect option, but all options are similar or limited. You end up less satisfied, even though you had freedom. It also hides the role of the designer or company. Someone made those options. They decided what to offer. They set boundaries. The user's freedom exists within those boundaries. Knowing that helps you make better decisions. You understand the limits and can choose wisely. Sometimes, customization illusion can be useful. It gives structure to choices. It helps people avoid decision paralysis. When options are framed well, users can find what fits without feeling lost. But it requires transparency. Users should know when they're choosing within limits. Recognizing this illusion lets you step back. When you pick a theme, ask, am I truly designing this, or am I picking a preset? When you customize your workout, ask, does this fit my goals? Or is it just the app's standard program? Awareness helps you focus on what matters. The illusion is part of how we live with complexity. The world offers endless possibilities, but no one can handle them all. So systems present curated choices. They make selection manageable. They let us feel in control without needing to reinvent everything. In the end, freedom is more than choice. It's about meaningful options, autonomy, and understanding limits. Customization illusions offer a taste of that, but they're not the whole meal. When you feel caught in the illusion, pause. Reflect on what you really want to create. Look beyond presets. Find your own way, even if it means fewer choices but more authenticity. That's real freedom. You're handed a task at work that feels familiar. You tell yourself you've done it before. You know how to handle it. You set a deadline. You think the task will be simple. But as you dig in, unexpected problems arise. You realize you underestimated the work. The deadline slips. The pressure builds. That's the overconfidence effect at work. Overconfidence means we believe we know more or can do more than we really do. It's a bias built into how we see ourselves. We want to trust our skills, our memory, our judgment, but that trust sometimes exceeds reality. We overestimate what we understand, what we can achieve, and how well we'll perform. Take someone who learns a few phrases in a new language. They start a conversation, confident they can get by. But the reality is harder. The speaker talks fast, uses slang, or changes topic. The learner struggles to keep up. Their confidence was based on limited knowledge. The gap between belief and skill becomes clear. This happens with drivers, too. Many rate their skills as above average. They believe they react faster, drive safer, and handle stress better than most. But accidents and near misses show that confidence doesn't always match ability. At work, managers can overestimate how well they know their teams. They think they understand everyone's strengths and weaknesses perfectly. They make decisions based on this belief, but unseen issues or miscommunications challenge their view. The team doesn't perform as expected. The gap grows. The overconfidence effect also shows in planning. You think you can finish a project in a week because you imagine a smooth process. You ignore potential setbacks, delays, or extra steps. The timeline is optimistic. The result is missed deadlines and frustration. One reason overconfidence happens is memory bias. We remember successes more than failures. We recall times we handled challenges well, but forget moments we struggled. Our brain filters experiences to boost self-esteem. The result is a rosier view of our skills than the facts support. Another cause is motivation. Believing in your abilities feels good. It pushes you to take on challenges. Overconfidence can drive ambition and risk-taking. But when it blinds you to limits, it leads to mistakes. Consider an investor who thinks they understand the market perfectly. They ignore warnings and take big risks. At first, they might succeed, but markets are unpredictable. Over time, losses mount. The initial confidence was misplaced. In relationships, people often overestimate how well they know others. They assume intentions, thoughts, or feelings. They believe they read between the lines perfectly, but misunderstandings happen. The overconfidence in judgment creates conflict or disappointment. The effect also impacts learning. If you believe you already know enough, you don't seek new information. You skip practice or feedback. That stalls growth. Real improvement requires humility about what you don't know. Sometimes overconfidence leads to stubbornness. You double down on a decision, convinced you're right. You dismiss others' advice. That rigidity closes doors and wastes opportunities. Overconfidence isn't always bad. It can boost morale and inspire action. It helps people tackle difficult tasks, but unchecked, it sets up failures. To manage it, start by comparing your beliefs with evidence. Look at past results honestly. Ask for feedback. Consider alternative views. Track how often your predictions are correct. Breaking big tasks into smaller parts helps too. It shows where gaps might exist. It gives checkpoints to adjust confidence based on progress. Be wary when things feel too easy. If a task seems simple, double-check. Complexity often hides beneath the surface. Recognizing limits doesn't weaken you. It strengthens your decision-making. It keeps expectations realistic. It prepares you for surprises. In the end, overconfidence is a common human trait. The key is awareness. When you catch yourself thinking, "I've got this," pause. Check the facts. Balance confidence with caution. That balance leads to better outcomes and steadier progress. You sit alone, replaying a conversation in your head. You imagine how it will go. You picture what you'll say. You think about their possible responses and how you'll answer. You try different tones and phrases. You want to be prepared. You want to control the outcome. This mental rehearsal feels like strategy, but it can also be a trap. Rehearsing conversations is common. We do it before difficult talks, like asking for a raise or addressing conflict. It helps us find the right words, calm nerves, and feel ready. But often, we don't stop at preparation. We script every detail, expecting the other person to respond as imagined. That's where the problem begins. When you rehearse too much, you start believing you can control the exchange. You expect the other person to say what you planned. You feel confident because you've imagined success. But real conversations aren't scripts. People don't follow your mental playbook. Imagine preparing to ask your manager for a raise. You've rehearsed your points, your achievements, your value, your reasons. You imagine them agreeing or asking questions you've anticipated. But when the moment comes, the manager raises unexpected concerns or shifts the topic. The surprise throws you off. Your rehearsed lines don't fit. You feel unsettled. Or think about a difficult talk with a friend. You plan what to say about a hurt feeling. You imagine they'll listen and understand, but they respond defensively or change the subject. Your imagined dialogue and reality don't match. That mismatch causes frustration or disappointment. Rehearsing can also increase anxiety. You run through worst-case scenarios. You imagine negative responses. You prepare comebacks. This mental loop feeds worry instead of easing it. The more you rehearse, the more nervous you become. Sometimes, rehearsing conversations means focusing too much on yourself. You craft how you want to sound, what impression you want to make, how you want to be seen. That self-focus can make you miss cues from the other person. You listen less and talk more. The conversation becomes a monologue in your head, not a shared exchange. People also rehearse to avoid vulnerability. By scripting every word, they try to shield themselves from unexpected reactions. But vulnerability is part of real connection. When you stick rigidly to a script, you risk missing opportunities for genuine understanding. Rehearsing can lead to rigid behavior. You want the conversation to follow your plan. You might interrupt when things go off script. You might ignore feelings that don't fit your expectations. That rigidity closes down dialogue rather than opening it up. On the other hand, rehearsing some key points is helpful. Knowing your main concerns or goals before a talk gives clarity. Having a few examples ready supports your case. The difference is being flexible, ready to listen, adapt, and respond honestly. Good conversations require presence. That means focusing on the moment, the other person's words and emotions. It means letting go of control over exactly how it unfolds. It means accepting surprises and adjusting. You can practice this by rehearsing less and reflecting more. Instead of scripting every response, think about what you want to achieve. What's your goal? What are your boundaries? Then stay open during the conversation. Imagine you want to talk about a problem with a partner. You rehearse the main point. I feel ignored when plans change. But you don't script their reply. You listen when they speak. You ask questions. You respond to what they say, not what you expected. Rehearsing also limits creativity. Real conversations evolve. They open new ideas and insights. If you're locked into a script, you miss these moments. You might repeat the same lines and miss what's really happening. Sometimes people rehearse to prepare for confrontation. They imagine standing firm, making their case clearly. That can be important. But when the rehearsal turns into a battle plan, it can create tension before the talk even starts. It's useful to remember that conversations are shared experiences. You influence them, but you don't control them. The other person brings their feelings, thoughts, and surprises. Being ready doesn't mean scripting their role. When you notice yourself rehearsing obsessively, pause. Ask, am I preparing to communicate clearly? Or am I trying to control the outcome? Can I let go of expectations and focus on understanding? Real influence comes not from scripting, but from listening, empathy, and honesty. That takes courage, not perfection. It means accepting that you might not say the perfect thing, that the conversation might not go as planned. And that's okay. The goal isn't to predict or control every word. It's to be ready to engage, adapt, and connect. That openness creates space for meaningful dialogue, not just rehearsed exchange. So next time you rehearse, focus on your intentions, not your lines. Prepare your heart and mind, not just your words. Trust that a genuine conversation can't be scripted, but it can be handled with presence and care. You help a colleague with their workload. You go out of your way to be kind and fair. Later, when you ask for help, you expect the same kindness back. You believe that good behavior will bring good results. You think life balances itself, that what you put in is what you get out. This is the belief in fairness karma. Many people hold this belief. It's comforting. It suggests the world is just. It means that if you act well, you'll be rewarded. If you act badly, you'll face consequences. The idea shows up in stories, religions, and everyday conversations. We say things like, "What goes around comes around," or "You reap what you sow." But real life doesn't always follow this logic. Sometimes good people face bad luck. Sometimes bad people succeed. The world is messy and unpredictable. Assuming fairness can lead to disappointment and frustration. Take someone who treats everyone with respect at work. They follow the rules, help others, and avoid conflict. Yet a colleague who cuts corners gets promoted faster. The first person feels puzzled. Why does fairness not win here, they wonder. Or imagine a parent who teaches their child values of honesty and kindness. The child faces bullying or exclusion. The parent struggles to explain why doing the right thing doesn't always lead to a smooth path. They hoped that good behavior would protect their child. This belief also shapes how we judge others. When someone suffers misfortune, we might ask, what did they do to deserve this? That question assumes fairness where it may not exist. It can lead to blame and lack of empathy. Sometimes, belief in fairness karma affects decision-making. People might avoid risks, thinking that if they behave correctly, they'll avoid trouble. Others might delay action, waiting for justice to unfold naturally. That can cause missed opportunities or acceptance of unfairness. In relationships, this belief can create tension. If you're kind and patient, you expect the same back. When it doesn't happen, you feel hurt or betrayed. You might think the other person is unfair or that life is broken. But fairness is not guaranteed. The world operates on chance, complexity, and varying motivations. Good behavior increases the chances of positive outcomes, but it doesn't ensure them. Sometimes, effort doesn't match results. That's not to say fairness has no value. Acting fairly builds trust. It shapes communities. It fosters cooperation. But expecting fairness as a rule sets unrealistic standards. When you hold this belief, disappointment becomes a lesson. You learn that fairness is an ideal, not a promise. You understand that sometimes you'll get good things without deserving them, and sometimes you won't get good things despite deserving them. This understanding helps you focus on what you control, your actions. You keep acting fairly, not to earn rewards, but because it aligns with your values. You accept outcomes as they come, without tying your self-worth to them. Belief in fairness karma also encourages patience. You realize that fairness might come later, or in unexpected ways. Sometimes, setbacks prepare you for something better. Sometimes, you find meaning beyond immediate results. You can still hope for fairness. You can still work toward fairness in your life and society, but you balance that hope with realism. You recognize that fairness is fragile and uneven. This mindset reduces frustration. When you face unfairness, you don't blame yourself or others unnecessarily. You seek solutions, adapt, and keep moving forward. It also deepens empathy. You stop assuming that suffering means fault. You understand that everyone faces chance and struggle. That perspective fosters kindness without expectation. In a chaotic world, believing in fairness karma helps create personal order. It guides behavior. It supports integrity. But it must be tempered by awareness that outcomes don't always match effort. That balance between hope and realism makes you resilient. It keeps you committed to fairness, even when the world isn't fair. It lets you act well without needing guarantees. In the end, fairness is not a law, but a choice. You choose to act fairly because it's right, not because you expect the world to reward you every time. Holding that choice steady is its own form of control. It grounds you amid uncertainty. It connects you to values deeper than results. And that connection matters more than any promise of fairness karma could. You read an article that supports your view on a topic. You feel satisfied. The facts line up with what you already believe. You think you're being objective. You're just seeing the truth. But you might be falling into confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to notice and remember information that supports your beliefs, while ignoring or dismissing evidence that challenges them. It feels natural. It feels right. But it narrows your perspective and blocks learning. Imagine someone who believes a certain diet is the best for health. They read stories about people thriving on that diet. They share those stories with friends. But when research shows risks or conflicting data, they overlook it or question the source. They think that can't be right. The bias protects their existing belief. Or picture a person following a political viewpoint. They watch news that aligns with their opinions. They join social media groups that echo their ideas. When they encounter opposing views, they dismiss them as fake or biased. They believe they're open-minded, but they're mostly reinforcing what they already think. This bias also shows in everyday choices. If you think a certain car brand is reliable, you'll remember stories of it working well. you'll forget complaints or recalls. That makes your opinion stronger, but less accurate. Confirmation bias affects decisions. It makes you favor information that supports your plans, even if it's incomplete. You might ignore warning signs or alternative options. That can lead to mistakes. One reason confirmation bias happens is how the brain seeks ease. Accepting familiar information is simpler than wrestling with challenges. Contradictory facts require effort, reflection, and sometimes admitting you were wrong. The bias saves mental energy by sticking to what feels true. Social factors deepen this bias. People want to belong. They want to be part of groups that share their views. Those groups reinforce the bias by repeating similar messages. The echo chamber makes it harder to see other perspectives. At work, confirmation bias can harm teamwork. If a leader favors a strategy, they might focus on data that supports it. They dismiss concerns as negativity. The team loses valuable input. The project suffers. In science and research, awareness of confirmation bias is crucial. Good scientists test their ideas against opposing evidence. They seek to disprove, not just confirm. That approach leads to more reliable knowledge. You experience confirmation bias in conversations too. When discussing a topic, you listen more carefully to points that support you. You interrupt or forget opposing views. You think you're debating fairly, but you're filtering. To counter this bias, start by seeking out information that challenges your beliefs. Read opposing viewpoints. Ask questions. Play devil's advocate with yourself. That doesn't mean abandoning your beliefs, but testing their strength. Another strategy is to be curious about why you hold certain views. Are they based on facts, feelings, habits, or group identity? Understanding the source helps you weigh information more fairly. It also helps to slow down decisions. When making choices, pause to review data from multiple angles. Talk to people with different opinions. Reflect on what evidence matters most. Recognizing confirmation bias doesn't mean you lack conviction. It means you're aware of how the mind works. You accept that beliefs evolve with new knowledge. This awareness builds humility. It keeps you open to learning. It helps you avoid blind spots. It makes your judgments stronger, not weaker. The goal isn't to eliminate beliefs, but to refine them, to base them on the broadest and most reliable information available. When you encounter your own bias, don't criticize yourself harshly. Bias is natural. The task is to notice it and adjust. By doing so, you free yourself from seeing only what fits your story. You open to the wider world with all its complexity and nuance. That openness leads to clearer thinking and better decisions. It connects you to truth, not just comfort. Confirmation bias feels like certainty, but real understanding comes from questioning certainty itself. You open a website. It loads slowly. You click the refresh button. The page still lags. You click refresh again. Maybe once more. The screen doesn't change much, but you feel compelled to try again. You want to fix it. You want to move forward. That repeated clicking feels decisive, but it often signals something else: desperation. Reclicking or refreshing is a common habit. When things stall or don't respond, we press again. We hope our action will speed things up. We want to feel in control. But most of the time, clicking again doesn't change the outcome. It just fills a pause with action. This behavior often starts with frustration. You expect immediate response. When the response slows, you get uneasy. Waiting feels passive and powerless. Clicking offers a sense of doing something, even if it's futile. Imagine booking the flight online. You enter your details. The page freezes. You click submit again. You worry the first click didn't register. You click again. The site processes multiple requests. It might cause delays or errors. Your impatience fuels more clicking, which worsens the problem. Or consider someone watching a video buffering. The play button stops working. They tap play multiple times. The video doesn't load faster, but pressing gives them a feeling of progress. They're not stuck. They're acting. Re-clicking also happens with apps. A button doesn't respond. You press it again and again. You shake your phone or tap harder. None of it changes the software's speed. The response depends on technical factors, not your taps. The urge to refresh comes from a mix of hope and anxiety. You want reassurance that the system is still working. You want to avoid missing out. Maybe the page will load with new information. Maybe the delay will end. Pressing again is a way to check. This compulsion can lead to wasted time. Instead of stepping back, you stay glued to the screen. You lose focus on other tasks. You repeat actions that don't help. The small act of clicking grows into a cycle. It also signals emotional tension. You feel uncertain or anxious about the situation. The clicking tries to ease that feeling. It's a nervous habit, like tapping your foot or pacing. Some websites and apps make this worse. Slow loading, unclear feedback, or complex interfaces increase user frustration. When you don't know what's happening, you click more. The design invites repetition. Understanding this helps you manage it. When a page lags, try to pause before clicking again. Ask, has enough time passed? Is the system likely to respond? Can I do something else while waiting? You can also rely on feedback. If a site shows a loading icon or message, trust it. Resist the urge to click just in case. That patience often speeds up the process in the long run. If refreshing becomes frequent, it's useful to check your feelings. Are you anxious? Are you rushing? Are you afraid of missing out? Acknowledge these emotions rather than trying to fix them with clicks. In group settings, repeated refreshing can affect others too. Imagine a team waiting on a shared document to update. Someone refreshes constantly. The update slows further. Others get distracted or annoyed. The habit spreads tension. At its core, re-clicking or refreshing is a search for control. We face delays we can't fix. You respond with small actions that feel meaningful. Those actions aren't wrong, they're human. But recognizing when they signal desperation helps you step back. Instead of clicking more, you might take a breath. You might check another tab. You might prepare for what comes next. That break brings calm and better focus. Next time you find yourself clicking repeatedly, notice it. See it as a sign not of decisiveness, but of impatience or worry. Then try a different response. Wait. Observe. Trust the process. That shift, from compulsive clicking to calm waiting, gives you true control. It lets you engage with technology on your terms. It frees you from the need to fix the unfixable in a single tap. In this way, small habits reveal bigger truths about how we handle uncertainty. Recognizing them helps you move from reaction to intention, from desperation to calm confidence. You ask a friend a simple question. They don't answer. You bring it up again. Silence. You notice they avoid eye contact or give short, clipped replies. Instead of saying what's wrong, they withdraw. You feel the tension grow, but you don't know why. That's passive-aggressive control. Passive-aggressive control happens when someone influences others by withholding communication or affection instead of addressing issues openly. It's a quiet way to manipulate behavior without direct confrontation. The person uses silence or avoidance to express dissatisfaction, hoping the other will notice and change. Imagine a partner upset about a decision. Instead of sharing feelings, they stop talking or become distant. The other partner tries to bridge the gap, asks what's wrong, but gets no clear answer. The silence creates pressure. The withdrawal is a signal. A silent partner controls the mood without saying a word. At work, a colleague might stop contributing to team discussions after a disagreement. They don't voice complaints, but avoid tasks or slow their work. The team feels the shift, but can't address it. The silent resistance influences how others act, even though no issue is openly stated. Passive-aggressive behavior can stem from fear. Fear of conflict, fear of rejection. People may not know how to express anger or disappointment directly, so they choose indirect methods. Silence feels safer than confrontation, but it's a form of control. This control works because silence carries meaning. We naturally try to fill gaps in communication. When someone withdraws, we wonder what we did wrong. We try harder to please or to find the hidden message. That effort puts us at their mercy. In families, passive-aggressive control often plays out during disagreements. A parent might stop speaking to a child after an argument, making the child feel guilty or anxious. The child tries to fix the silence without understanding its cause. The withdrawal directs behavior more than words. Friends sometimes do this too. After feeling hurt, one friend pulls back, avoids invitations, or stops texting. The other friend feels confused and tries to make amends. The silent friend exerts power without explanation. Passive-aggressive control can harm relationships. It builds walls, breeds resentment, and blocks honest dialogue. Problems don't get solved because they're never fully addressed. Instead, they simmer under the surface. Recognizing this behavior helps break the cycle. If you notice silence or withdrawal being used as a weapon, you can ask gently but clearly, "I notice you're quiet. Can we talk about what's going on?" That invitation encourages openness rather than guessing. If you find yourself withdrawing to influence others, it's worth reflecting on why. Are you avoiding conflict? Do you fear being misunderstood? Learning to express feelings directly reduces the need for silent control. Healthy communication means sharing frustrations, needs, and boundaries clearly. It means facing discomfort rather than hiding behind silence. That openness builds trust and respect. Sometimes, silence is simply a break, not control. People need space to think or calm down. But when silence becomes a pattern used to punish or manipulate, it crosses into passive aggression. Being aware of this dynamic gives you power. You can respond with patience and clarity instead of confusion or guilt. You can invite conversation instead of silence. In the end, control through withdrawal is a quiet but powerful force. It shapes interactions without words. Understanding it helps you foster honest and open relationships where silence isn't a weapon, but a space for listening and healing. You scroll through your social media feed. An ad pops up for a pair of shoes. The style matches your taste. The price seems reasonable. You think, "This is perfect for me." You click the link, browse the site, maybe even buy. You feel like you made the choice, but did you? Personalized ads create the feeling that you chose the product, when in fact, the product was chosen for you. Companies collect data about your browsing habits, purchases, likes, and searches. They use this data to predict what you might want. The ads you see are carefully selected based on that prediction. It's a subtle form of influence, designed to feel personal and relevant. This feeling of choice is powerful. When you see something tailored to you, it feels less like a sales pitch and more like a recommendation from a friend. You trust it, you feel in control. But the reality is different. The product didn't come from your free will alone. It came from algorithms analyzing your behavior and nudging you towards specific options. Imagine you're thinking about buying a new phone case. You look at a few online. Later, you notice ads for cases that look just like the ones you considered. You feel these ads confirm your preference. You think, "I wanted this anyway." But the ads didn't just reflect your interests, they shaped them. They narrowed your choices to a set that marketers wanted you to see. This illusion of choice can limit real freedom. When the ads guide you towards certain products, you might miss other options that better suit your needs. You don't get to browse the full market. You see a filtered version designed to increase the chance you buy. Personalized ads also play with timing. They show up just when you're considering a purchase or feeling vulnerable. Maybe you've been stressed or bored or looking for a gift. The ads sense this and push products that match your mood. That feels helpful, but it also makes you more likely to act on impulse. The effect goes beyond products. Services, subscriptions, even news articles get tailored to your profile. The online world creates a bubble around you, showing content that aligns with your past behavior. That bubble feels comfortable but narrows your perspective. You might notice the same ad multiple times. Repetition builds familiarity. The more you see something, the more it feels like a good choice. That familiarity can override critical thinking. You start to believe the product is right because it's everywhere you look. The technology behind personalized ads is sophisticated. It tracks clicks, views, time spent on pages, and even cursor movements. It tests different ads with different people, learning what works best. The process is invisible, but constant. Sometimes personalized ads surprise you. You see products related to a hobby you don't remember searching for, or an interest you rarely mention. That's because your data includes indirect clues: your location, your social circles, your device usage. The ads connect dots you didn't know existed. This creates a sense of being understood. The digital world feels like it knows you. That feeling builds trust and lowers defenses. You don't question the ad as much. You're more likely to engage, however. Personalized ads raise questions about privacy and autonomy. How much should companies know about you? How much influence should they have over your choices? When does helpful targeting become manipulation? Understanding how personalized ads work helps you see past the illusion. You recognize that the feeling of choice might be partly constructed. That awareness lets you pause before clicking or buying. It encourages you to explore options beyond what's shown. You can take steps to regain control. Use private browsing modes, adjust ad settings on platforms, clear cookies regularly, seek reviews and recommendations outside the ads. These actions help reduce the filtering effect. Being aware also means accepting that all advertising tries to influence. Personalized ads just do it more subtly. You still have the final say. The difference is being conscious of how the ads reach you. The next time an ad feels made for you, remember it's made from you, your data, your patterns, your digital footprint. It's a mirror, not a pure reflection. The product's presence is a result of algorithms aiming to guide your decisions. That doesn't mean you can't enjoy or benefit from personalized recommendations. They can save time and introduce useful products. But balance comes from knowing when your choices are yours and when they're shaped for you. In the end, real choice means more than clicking a link. It means questioning how the options appeared. It means stepping outside the tailored feed to see the broader market. When you do that, you move from being a target to being a true chooser. That shift brings clarity and confidence in a world designed to influence your every click. You've had a tough day. Work was stressful, plans fell through, or you just woke up feeling off. You decide to go shopping. You browse stores or scroll through online shops. You pick out a few items, something new to wear, a gadget, or maybe a book you've been curious about. The act of buying feels good. It feels like you're doing something to fix the way you feel. That's retail therapy. Retail therapy isn't about the things themselves. It's about the feeling of control. When life feels chaotic or overwhelming, shopping becomes a way to regain a sense of order. You choose what to buy, how much to spend, when to shop. That choice gives you a sense of power when other parts of life seem unpredictable. Imagine someone going through a breakup. They feel sad, lost, and uncertain about the future. They buy new clothes, hoping the change will lift their mood. The clothes don't erase the pain, but they represent a fresh start. The act of selecting something new gives a small boost of confidence. Or think about a person stressed by work deadlines. After hours of pressure, they step into a store. They take time to browse, touch, and pick. That moment slows things down. It shifts focus from problems to options. The purchase signals a brief escape from worry. Retail therapy also connects to identity. Buying something new lets you shape how you see yourself and how others see you. A new jacket can feel like reclaiming style or status. A book can signal growth or curiosity. The items become symbols of who you want to be. This behavior taps into basic human needs. We want autonomy, competence, and relatedness. Shopping offers a way to meet these needs temporarily. You make choices. Autonomy, master the shopping process. Competence, and connect to culture or community through products, relatedness. However, retail therapy can have downsides. When shopping becomes the main way to cope, it can lead to overspending, debt, or clutter. The relief it brings is often short-lived. The emotional issues beneath remain, waiting for attention. Sometimes people shop to avoid facing feelings. Instead of sitting with stress or sadness, they fill the gap with purchases. The new things create distraction, but the underlying tension doesn't disappear. Recognizing retail therapy as a form of self-soothing helps you understand your habits. It shows that shopping is more than consumerism, it's emotional work. That awareness lets you find other ways to regain control. For example, you might try taking a walk, calling a friend, or practicing mindfulness. These actions also build calm and agency without the risks of overbuying. Shopping can still be enjoyable and positive. Buying gifts for loved ones or treating yourself occasionally can bring genuine joy. The key is balance and intention. When you feel the urge to shop as therapy, pause and ask what you really need. Is it distraction, connection, comfort? Knowing the answer opens paths to meet those needs directly. Retail therapy reflects how we handle uncertainty and emotion. It's a natural response to feeling out of control, but it's only one tool among many. Building resilience means having multiple ways to cope. It means knowing when shopping serves you and when it might be covering something deeper. Understanding this gives you freedom. You can shop with awareness, not impulse. You can choose healing over distraction. You can find true control beyond the checkout line. You find yourself thinking, if I had spoken up, things would be different. Or if I'd taken that job, my life would be better now. These thoughts pull you into a mental rewind, imagining a world where your choices change the outcome. This is the fantasy of, if I'd done X. It's a way to preserve belief in your influence over life, even when things don't go as planned. We all engage in this kind of mental time travel. When events disappoint or pain lingers, imagining a different choice feels like reclaiming control. It reassures us that the outcome wasn't fixed, that somewhere along the line our actions mattered. It's a coping mechanism that keeps hope alive. Consider someone who lost a friendship. They replay conversations, wondering if saying something differently could have saved it. If I'd apologized sooner, we'd still be close, they think. The past feels like a forked path. The alternate route feels like redemption. Or imagine a student who failed an exam. They think, if I had studied more, I'd have passed. They envision late nights and extra effort. This fantasy preserves their self-image as capable. It softens the sting of failure. The same pattern shows in relationships. After a breakup, people imagine choices they didn't make, moving to a new city, being more patient, speaking less harshly. These what-if scenarios offer comfort. They suggest the pain is not random, but something that could have been changed. But these fantasies can also trap us. When we focus on alternate pasts, we get stuck. We chase illusions instead of accepting reality. We blame ourselves for what can't be undone. We delay moving forward. The problem is that these imagined changes rarely reflect the full picture. The past is complex. Every choice connects to many others. Changing one detail might not change the outcome, or might lead to unexpected results. For example, someone thinks if they hadn't taken a certain job, their career would be better. But that job gave them experience, connections, or lessons that shaped them. Without it, they might have faced different challenges or missed opportunities. These fantasies also overlook external factors: luck, timing, other people's decisions. Life is not only about what we do, it's also about what happens around us. Imagining full control over outcomes can create false expectations. Still, these "if I'd done X" thoughts have value. They show you care. They reveal what matters to you: apology, effort, patience, courage. They point to areas for growth. They remind you that your choices shape your story. The key is balance. Use these thoughts to learn, not to punish yourself. Reflect on what you might do differently next time. Accept that some things can't be changed. Focus on what you can do now. One way to shift is to ask, what did I do right? What helped me then? What strengths did I show? That helps build resilience instead of regret. You can also imagine the future instead of the past. Instead of, if I'd done X, try, next time I will. That reorients your energy toward action and growth. Remember, life is a series of moments. Each one offers choices and chances to influence what comes next. The past shapes you, but it doesn't define your whole path. Holding on too tightly to alternate pasts can blind you to present possibilities. Letting go of what-ifs opens space for what now. When you catch yourself in these fantasies, notice the emotions behind them: hope, fear, guilt, longing. Acknowledge those feelings without judgment. Then gently bring your focus back to the present. The desire to believe in your influence is natural. It's part of being human. But real influence comes from engaging with reality as it is, not as you wish it had been. By doing that, you free yourself from the past's grip. You make room to shape the future. You move from imagining change to living change. That shift takes courage. It means accepting uncertainty and imperfection. It means trusting yourself even without guarantees. But it's also where true agency lives, not in fantasies, but in choice and action today. You start downloading a file. A small bar appears on your screen, slowly filling up with color. You watch it inch forward: 10%, 25%, 50%, 75%, then done. That simple animation gives you a sense of control. You know how much is left. You feel involved in the process. That's progress bar fixation. Progress bars are everywhere. When you install software, upload photos, or wait for a game to load, you see them. They're designed to keep you calm and engaged during delays. Watching the bar move reassures you that something is happening. It breaks the silence of waiting. The appeal is easy to understand. Waiting without feedback feels frustrating. When you don't know how long something will take, your mind jumps to worst-case scenarios. The process feels endless. A progress bar turns waiting into a measurable experience. It transforms uncertainty into something you can track. Imagine installing an update on your phone. Without a progress bar, you'd wonder if it froze or if it's working. With the bar, you watch the line move steadily. Each percentage brings relief. You know the finish line is getting closer. This feeling of involvement is powerful. Even though you're not speeding up the process, watching progress makes you feel in charge. It reduces anxiety. It distracts from impatience. It gives you something to focus on. Sometimes the bar moves smoothly. Sometimes it stalls or jumps ahead. Those shifts can cause frustration. You feel stuck or fooled. But even so, you keep watching. The bar offers a promise. Progress is happening, even if it's slow. Progress bars also guide your expectations. If the bar fills slowly at first, you prepare for a long wait. If it jumps quickly, you expect a fast finish. Designers know this and often tweak progress bars to keep users comfortable. Sometimes bars move faster than actual progress early on, then slow down near the end to manage patience. This fixation isn't just about technology. It reflects a deeper need for control and clarity. When life feels uncertain, having a clear signal of progress, no matter how small, calms the mind. It feels like making steps even when the path is long. At work, progress indicators appear in reports, project dashboards, and task lists. Seeing completion percentages or milestones gives teams a shared sense of movement. It helps break big goals into manageable parts. It shows effort translating into results. But this fixation can also mislead. Sometimes the progress bar doesn't reflect real progress accurately. It might show completion before the task is truly done, or it might stall without clear reasons. That disconnect can erode trust. People also fixate on progress bars when facing difficult tasks. They check for signs that they're moving forward. A writer sees pages written, a student sees chapters finished. Those markers motivate continuation. Without them, it's easy to feel stuck or overwhelmed. The fixation can become a habit. You start seeking progress markers in all areas: fitness apps, learning platforms, even personal growth journals. Those markers offer feedback loops that encourage persistence. Yet, it's important to remember that the bar is a representation, not the process itself. The real work happens behind the scenes, in the data processing, the learning, the practicing. The progress bar helps you feel connected, but it's not the achievement. Sometimes, focusing too much on the bar distracts from the bigger picture. You might rush just to see the bar move faster. You might lose patience if the bar slows. You might feel discouraged if it resets or disappears. Balancing fixation means appreciating progress bars as tools, not goals. They're signals that something is happening. They're guides, not guarantees. When you see a progress bar, remind yourself the process is unfolding whether or not the bar moves smoothly. Your patience and engagement matter more than the animation. The next time you find yourself staring at a bar filling up, notice how it makes you feel. Are you calm, anxious, impatient? Aware of that emotion lets you choose how to respond. Progress bar fixation reveals how small feedback can shape experience. It shows our need for control in moments of waiting. By understanding that, you gain perspective. You move from being a passive watcher to an active participant, patient, informed, and steady. That mindset turns waiting from frustration into an opportunity for calm and focus. It shifts the power from a moving bar back to you.